right. So I believe we're good to go. We're going to ask Fidel Bea to open us up with Al-Fatiha. Thank you all for being with us as we begin.
A'udhu billahi minal shaitanir rajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Ar-Rahmanir-Rahim. Maliki yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdinal siratal mustaqim. Siratal ladzina an'amta 'alaihim ghairil maghdubi 'alaihim waladdallin. Amen. And that is, I seek refuge with Allah from Shaitan the rejected, with Allah's name, with Allah's signature, with Allah's permission, the merciful benefactor, the merciful redeemer. The praise belongs solely to Subhanallah. Merciful benefactor, merciful redeemer. The praise belongs to Allah, guardian, evolver, cherisher, sustainer of all systems of knowledge. Merciful benefactor, merciful redeemer, master of the day of judgment. Thee do we worship, and thine aid we seek. Guide us on the path of ascent, the path of those whom thou hast bestowed your civilizing grace, not of those whom have deserved your wrath and those who have gone astray. Amen.
Thank you for a wonderful opening of Al-Fatiha. And again, that is Fidel Bea of Atlanta, New Jersey. Atlanta, Georgia, of course. And welcome to the University Online Learning course on this 5th night of June 2018. We're within the last 10 days of this year's month of Ramadan, and that is the month of fasting for Muslims around the world, but more importantly, the month in which we are reintroduced to the guidance called Al-Quran. So we're going to begin with today's class session, which is going to be giving some elaboration on the surah called Al-Asr. Al-Asr. And I entitled this one Lost and Turned Out because Al-Asr is speaking to a situation among human beings that produces tremendous amounts of loss, as well as producing a situation where human beings cannot see their way adequately, and therefore human beings come into a situation where they find themselves lost. So Asr is a reference to loss as well as being lost. And you can hear in those two English words that there is definitely a linguistic connection. And people usually experience loss when they're in the dark, when they can't see, when they can't really navigate the way. You know, you're more likely to lose things when you can't see your way. You know, when you're lost and don't know where you are, don't know the way out of where you are to get to a place that you do know where you are. All of those things are wrapped up in this whole concept of Asr. And just to say the word Asr, you have to produce a straining movement in the back of the throat because of the letter Ain. And all of you who are learners in the University Online Learning course, you're already familiar through the book Lunetics in terms of what the letter Ain represents. It represents the straining on the vision primarily. Straining to see, straining to stay awake, you know, just overall strain that produces a wetness in the eye, whether that the wetness manifests as tears of pain because of the strain related to some endeavor, or whether we're talking about the tears related to joy, you know, and the happiness that can also produce an overflow of tears, whether we're talking about the straining that we do in the gymnasium that produces the water called a sweat from the sweat glands, or whether we're talking about the straining necessary in the old country, as people used to do when they were to send their bucket down into the well to bring up water, but there was a straining on the muscles in order to do so because those buckets could be very, very heavy once filled with water. So Ain is talking about a situation of strain that is designed to produce moisture. And I'm giving it to you like that in order for you to understand the connections between these symbols that we're presenting to you, such as water, and how it relates to something in the human nature that is being addressed by God in the Quran. And these concepts have also been addressed in previous scriptures, especially the Bible and the Torah, or the Old Testament and the New Testament, as they're called. Beginning. Allah has placed no difficult ideas in this particular surah. Any child can understand the concepts. This surah actually redefines success and failure according to Allah's parameters and paradigms, and not by the world's fabricated values and standards. So we are about to review these values through a Quranic lens. Surah Al-Asr is also addressing issues of societal depression. I want you to think about that. We know what individual depression is, but we might not be aware that there is even such a thing as societal depression. But in any case, Surah Al-Asr is addressing this very important issue of societal depression and what is necessary for rebounding from it. It is one of the most potent surahs in the Quran, lending help towards counseling individuals and groups of people. And again, we see counseling sometimes as being something that demands individual attention, or something that can only be done individual to individual. But the Quran is actually giving us remedies for situations that involve the needed counseling that groups of people, even whole ethnic groups of people, need. And we're going to be paying special attention to the so-called African American situation when it comes to the need for group soul counseling. So keep that in mind also. The Quran is addressing human beginnings as well as the conclusions of things. It does so by speaking to every conceivable concept which has had a significant impact on a man's social development, especially those ideas that were claimed to have been authorized by God. So every important issue in every scripture is being addressed in the final scripture called Al-Quran. One of the connections in the Arabic word Asr is to the English words author, A-U-T-H-O-R, and also authority, or authority, A-U-T-H-O-R-I-T-Y. It is also connected to what came to be the single most influential mythology, influencing mythologies and religions across the planet. And it is that of Al-Asr, called Osiris by the Greeks, who was also depicted as a crucified sun, and that sun is to be spelled S-U-N. So let us begin. I want to start by giving you a quotation from Imam Waratuddin Muhammad, where he says, quote, "God inspired humans to not only work for the present, but to work for the future. Man says, I have to prepare for the future, and if I can, help others to prepare for the future. This is what made prophets. The prophet nature is in every human being. Every human being is born with the prophet nature. We are the descendants of Adam, and Adam was not only the first man, he was the first prophet. He warned his children. He planned the life for the future. The need to prophesy grew stronger and stronger as man lived and experienced life in his environment. Trouble for that life produced more and more seers who were straining and straining to look into the future to know where is this going and how can we prepare better for what we're going to face. It is common knowledge that the prophet nature is in all of us. We can never say that Muhammad is our messenger, but we always say that he is our prophet. He is our prophet. He is flesh of our flesh and bone of our bone. He is human like we are. So we begin with the first of 3 ayat or verses of this particular surah called Al-Asr. And it begins, Wal Asri. Translated into English, I swear by the squeezing of time. So I know you've heard the translation by the token of time, which is fine, although it's an antiquated kind of language. I don't know personally of anyone who speaks about time in terms of tokens. I've heard of token Negroes and tokens for the subway, and that's even antiquated now in New York City at least. But it's a very rare, if at all, you're going to hear about time being spoken of as a token. And that's a difficult concept for us to fathom. So we're going to go right to the chase of that particular word, asr, and refer to it as a squeezing, a compressing, or a squeezing of time. This word asr is from a root word which means to squeeze. That word is usir. When you squeeze a fruit, you are attempting to get the essence out of it. When God puts the squeeze, so to speak, on humanity, it is for the purposes of extracting the essence or the essentials out of our nature. Our nature is one that God has created, condoned, and confirmed as being excellent. However, that excellence is only acceptable after the process of elimination has taken place. So learners, when all of the rind and all of the extraneous parts of the fruit that are unnecessary for the human system are dealt away with, we are then left with the essence of the fruit, which we call the juice of the fruit. The apple juice, once the apple is pressed, or the orange juice, once the oranges are squeezed, the lemon juice, etc., etc. We're left with the juice. And it's interesting to me, just as a connection in the phonemic, on the phonemic level of things, meaning how things sound. It's interesting that the 30th of the Quran that we're reading day by day, it's called the juice. Yeah, it's spelled J-U-Z, but it's called the juice. You know, so the Muslims are really the ones in the world with the juice. Yeah, it's not O.J. Simpson. It's the simple juice that the Quran gives. If we would just open up our minds and think or ponder. Let's continue. Yeah, I'm going to point out a few letters that are of essential value to the conversation. Those are letters, and if you're not understanding Arabic or Arabic phonetics or Arabic pronunciations or transliterations and all of that big time stuff, don't worry about it. Just pay attention with your ears and you'll get it, inshallah. So the letter Ain we discussed, and that is coming from the back of the throat, as we mentioned, and allowing your throat to feel just a little bit strained. Ain, Ain, right? Now, when you connect Ain to a different letter called Sod, which is one of the S sounds, then it becomes Ain Sod. Ain Sod. Now, there are two other letters that produce the same phonemes, although they are different letters in the Arabic letter system, and they are Aleph, Sin. And I should double this I here so that you don't think we're trying to sell you on sin. Sometimes you'll see that with a double E, sometimes with a double I, but it's always pronounced a Sin. So Aleph is an A sound also, like Ein is an open A sound, and then Sin is the S sound, which is called a fricative, a whispering fricative, in the same way that Sod. So you have to hear almost a whistle coming from your lips when you pronounce these letters. Sod and Sin. Sod is a little softer than Sin. Ein is more challenging to the back of the throat than is the letter Aleph. But they both operate in the same way, and Ein Sod and Aleph Sin in and of itself, or of themselves, allude to the rising light and heat of a new day's sun. So I'm telling you something about the first two letters of the word Asr, which are Ein and Sod. But even when you see words that begin with Aleph and Sin, they're going to carry these same basic meanings. That's what needs to be understood. This is the science that's built into this letter system that eludes most people, even people who teach the Arabic language are not necessarily familiar with this particular phenomenon. So pay attention. So we're talking about these two letters, which in English would just be AS, AS. That's all we're talking. And that AS has produced a word that we're all familiar with because it represents one of the continents on this planet called Asia. Asia. Why is it called Asia? Because Asia refers to the land of the rising sun. Why does Asia, you see the AS there? Why, and this is just a suffix, pardon me, IA. Why does Asia mean the land of the rising sun? See, they don't just come up with these meanings out of thin air or whatever. They're not guessing. They're actually basing the meanings on what they used to know, at least, if they still don't know it, what they used to know to be the actual denotations of letters, meaning the actual frequency or inference that these letters carry. And they carried those meanings into the making or the formation of words. And that's all words, no matter where you find them on the planet, no matter what language you're speaking, every single word that is spoken is connected to a frequency, or what they call in linguistics a phoneme, and that phoneme means something in the human psyche. Here's what a lot of linguists are missing. They think that language is arbitrary and that people just sat around the campfire thousands of years ago and decided to say, and it was just indiscriminate And then they just started pulling some of that indiscriminate stuff out of the sky and saying, well, if I say tab, let's make that the tub. And if I say, ha ta, let's make that my hat. And they thought that these things were indiscriminate. This is what most scholars right now of language are teaching, and it's incorrect. Nothing that the human being speaks out of his or her mouth is indiscriminate or is pulled out of the sky and just happens to be agreed upon by other human beings in that area. No such thing. When you read Surah 55 called Ar-Rahman, the merciful benefactor, you read that particular surah, you're going to find in the very beginning of it that Allah speaks about the creation and formation of human language, the ability of the human being to articulate. That is being spoken of as something that Allah rewarded the human being with due to Allah's mercy on the human being. So language is not haphazard in the human being. Language is actually a gift from on high that allows the human being to articulate knowledge and communication in ways that no other creature that we know of is capable of doing. So this A and S represents the rising light and heat of a new day's sun. And that's why you find it connected to the word Asia. But again, it's also connected to the word Asr, which begins Ain Sad, and then a Ra is also added to complete the word for Asr. But by mere virtue of the fact that it has this Ain Sad, it carries the meaning of Ain Sad or AS in relation to it representing a rising sun or rising light. So that's the connection that we're making for you today. Now you might say, well, how does that connect with this whole idea of Asr? I thought Asr represented time. Yeah, but time calculated in which way? Calculated by the rising and the setting of the sun over how many hundreds and thousands, maybe millions of years that this creation has been in existence. We don't know. But for whatever length of time it is, we know that it was experiencing sunrises and sunsets for all of the duration that it has been here. And that is calculated into just those two letters, Ain and Sad. Ain and Sad. So let's look at some of the dictionary definitions. This is from Lane's Free Lexicon. So you can actually Google that site and see these for yourself. But let's just look at some other connections in the logic of the letters AS, for simplicity's sake. AS. AS. Now, Aleph, Sin, Ra. Now, those are not the letters for Asr. Asr, remember, is Ain, Sad, Ra. So we'll get to that. Okay? But I'm showing you that by mere virtue of the fact that these sounds, forget the letters themselves, the sounds are giving the meaning for the word. So Aleph, Sin, Ra means to make captive or prisoner. Joint, ligament, frame, vigor, energy. Don't worry about that part for now. The part I want to point your attention to is this whole idea of making something captive or prisoner, because you're going to find that theme running throughout the other words that carry this same A-S sound or A-S sound. So we go down from that word to Aleph, Sad, Ra. And what does it mean? It means to burden, yes, to commit a sin, okay, crime, have responsibility, break a thing, Here we go. Confine or debar. You see that? To confine or debar, or to banish, to detain. You see? This is all dealing with prison. To hold in custody. So you can see the rest of the connections in the words that are being used in these descriptions. So we've just come upon another very important finding for the letters AS, as we find them anywhere in the world, but we're talking particularly now about how they are being used in the Quran, and specifically how they are affecting the word that we're examining today, called the Asr. You should know by now that Asr has something to do with the rising sun, and we may even say the rising and the setting of the sun if we're talking about the cycles that the sun makes on a daily basis and an annual basis. But it also has something to do with being captive or being prisoner. All right. Now, if we interchange aleph with ayn and seen with sod or even kaf, we still get meanings related to detainment. Now, for those of you who might be a little bit lost, this won't be the loss that people are experiencing who are under the punishment of Al-Asr. So don't worry about the loss being that kind of loss. This is just the kind of loss. In fact, you haven't lost anything. This is really me opening you up to a world of goodies. And you just don't know where to start. You don't know what to choose from. You have to be taught what things in this particular store are of value to you. So let your eyes do the walking, as they say, and just pay careful attention. If we interchange aleph with ayn, as we have done, and seen with sod, as we did in this section up here, you can even change the S sound with the K sound. How do we know that? Because English tells us so. In English, they have the letter C, but C can be the K sound or the S sound. There's no independent sound for our English letter C. If I give you the word circus, there are two C's in that word. But the first one is pronounced as an S, sir, and the second is pronounced as a K, cuss. Outside of that, there's no independent sound for the letter C. It's kind of like a trick letter in the English language. And it's known all over the world of languages that those two sounds can be interchanged. So if I said Ain, Sod, Ra, or let's just stick with these two letters since we're dealing with these two, Aleph, Sod, or Aleph, Sin. If we said Ain, Sod, as we did up here, and if we said Ain, Kaf should also be connected to the idea laid down in Ain Sin or Ain Sod. Why? Because the letter K, here it's called Kaf in Arabic, can be interchanged with the letter Sod or the letter Sin, as long as it has the S sound. And I believe that's easy enough for you to grasp. All right. So that means that, and this is excluding whatever the third radical is, it doesn't matter. If you understand the construction of Arabic, in every language actually, you'll understand that the most importance is put on the base consonantal connections in the word, which are normally 2 letters that grow to be 3 letters. They begin as biconsonantal or biliteral or bilateral, whichever you prefer, and they grow to become triconsonantal or trilateral, 3-letter roots. So Ain Kaf, we should be able to detect the meaning in these definitions here that are related at least to the idea of detainment or imprisonment. So let's look. Ain Kaf Fa means to arrange, to set a thing in order. He kept or clave to it constantly and preservingly. Continue intently. They went around something, advance, approach it. Now here we go. Withheld, detain, confined. You see that? And then they go even further than that to say to seclude oneself, remain, stay, dwell. That's what you do if you get locked up, you know. They seclude you. You don't seclude yourself, but they will definitely put you in seclusion. So I'm showing this to you so that your mind will eventually begin to acclimate towards how these meanings for words actually come into existence. It's a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful science. Let's continue. Then we have the word that is formed from the three letters Ain, Sin, Ra. Then we have the meanings from the letters Ain, Sod, Ra. You see, both of those are S sounds. That means both of the meanings for these words should have similar connections. So let's see. So Ain, Sin, Ra means to be difficult, hard, intricate, right? And Ain, Sod, Ra means to press, squeeze, wring. And that's all we need to deal with for now. That the difficulty in Ain, Sin, Ra is seen in a different kind of expression based on the idea of having to press something, or to squeeze something, or to wring out a rag, or to press or squeeze apples or oranges. Because the very action of pressing and squeezing is difficult. So both of these words are used independently in the Quran, but they have related meanings. You might want to call these words kissing cousins. All right. Now, what they're not telling you here is what they have been telling you in these other Ain, Sin, or Aleph, Sin, or Ain, Sod, or Ain, Kaf connections. They have been telling you something significant, and that is that somewhere buried within these two letters is the idea of being confined, being imprisoned, being secluded. They don't tell you that when it comes to Ain, Sod, Ra. Not that they are intentionally holding something from you, but they themselves are not understanding the importance of that logic in the explanation of this word. We'll be getting to that in a moment. Now, the phonemes S and R together signify things that have freedom of movement. So what am I saying to you? I'm saying to something to you very important tonight, and I want you to pay very careful attention. What I'm saying to you is that we're dealing with one word. That word is awesome. And it has three connected letters. Three connected letters. Ain, Sod, Ra. But what I'm saying to you is something, again, that many people who learn the Arabic language don't know. And that is that although this word has three connected letters, it's actually a combination of several strategies that have been built into the language that are really, really beautiful when you understand what has been done. And here is what has been done. If we include the A sound, whether it's Aleph or Ain, doesn't matter. And we include the Sod, and then we include the Ra, okay, we have our word, Asr, Asr. But what we need to know is that the Ain and Sod words that I introduced to you earlier that had to do with imprisoning a thing were actually strategically connected by some deep-rooted thinkers in the ancient Arabic language system, the ones who constructed the system, the ones who paid meticulous attention to the fitrah, to nature and how nature was operating. They saw the importance of connections in nature. So what they did was they took the AS sound, which already had an independent meaning, and they linked it with the SR sound. So although the word is Asr, it's still giving you meanings based on the AS connection by itself and what that means, and then on the SR connection and what those words mean. Now look at the beauty of this. The AS connection means to imprison a thing, and the SR connection means to free a thing, to give a thing freedom of movement. All right, so let's look at it now. So when we look at this SR connection in Arabic words, for instance, in sin, ra, ain, it means to hasten or to be quick. You see, freedom of movement. When we look at sin, ra, ba, it means to go freely, flow, run, freedom of movement. When we look at sin, ra, fa, it means to exceed the undue bounds or just limits, right? To break out of the confinement, right? And when we look at sin, ra, ha, it means to release or to set free. So I think I've given you enough evidence to make my initial case, or the initial part of my case. So continue to pay attention. And just a couple of additional words with the sin ra connection. Sin ra ra gives us the word that means to make a secret manifest. That means to let it out in the open, to free the secret so that others will know about it, right? So still the idea of freeing a thing is implicit in these particular combinations of letters, sin ra we're discussing. And of course, sod ra tau means trodden without difficulty. That means it's a path that is freely walked. That is this. That's what gives us the word sirat al-mustaqim. Sod ra tau. Sirat. It's a path which is even and it's wide enough so that you have the freedom of movement along that path, and that you can move along that path. How? Without difficulty. You see, still alluding to the idea of freedom of movement. All right, now let's talk about this pressure that is put on something in order to extract its essence that we spoke about earlier, related to usir and this word asr. Pressure can make some things more precious. You hear the connections in those two words? And I believe they had a movie dealing with a situation related to an African-American female, young female, and they called her Precious. Oh boy, the conspirators know how to put their logic together when they're talking about us especially. Yeah, she was precious, all right, but she was given a certain set of circumstances that represented undue pressure. So pressure can crush rocks into minute pieces, but it can also create diamonds out of coal. Black coal that most of us don't even like to put our hands on because it leaves a residue. But if you put enough pressure, being in the ground, that coal being in the ground for thousands and millions of years possibly, the compression, the pressure that is put on those particular rocks eventually will produce something as shiny and as refined as what will come to be the diamonds that many of us love. Now, the English letters PRS that we're finding in pressure and even in precious, if you understand the C to be SH and you see the S on the end here. So we're talking about the letters PRS. in pressure. Those are the root letters in English for the word pressure. Well, PRS can also be BRS because the P and the V are interchangeable letters in languages where you find the P and the B. Arabic doesn't have a P, so that would end up being either B or F. So I'm saying this to most of you who already know this because you have the Lunetics book and you know about the interchangeability of consonants. You already know that the P is called a labial letter because labial means lip, and any letter that is to be pronounced using any part of the lip or both lips or lip touching the teeth, any of those letters such as P, B, F, V, those are called labials and they can be interchanged. So this labial called P can interchange with this labial called B. And the letter R, as you know, can be interchanged with the letter L. Those are called the liquids, right? Those are letters where your tongue has to touch the top palate within your mouth. The tongue has to go up high to say L, and it has to go up high to say R, and let that tongue just roll off the top palate of your mouth. All right?
Instructor, you just got silent. It went low.
You're not hearing me? Okay, you're not hearing me?
Now I hear you better.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that. And I hope it wasn't too long that that condition was there. But I'm okay now? Can you hear me now?
It went back low.
Okay. How about now? Are you hearing me?
Okay, I hear you better now.
All right. Am I coming across clear?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
All right. Very good. Thank you. All right. Did you hear what I said about the BRS and the BLS?
Yes, sir.
All right. Very good. Thank you for that. This interaction is important. Great. Okay. So let us continue. So just continue to mute your phone until you need to say something else to me. So we'll have a nice, clear webinar call. Thank you. So PRS, I repeat, can also be VRS, but it can also be VLS because R and L also interchange. And VLS are the letters that form the word Iblis, which all of us who read the Quran are familiar with. Iblis. That is Satan in his diapers. When he was wearing Pampers, he was known as Iblis. And he was wearing Pampers, and sometimes the tape would come loose and all of that mess would just, you know, everywhere he goes, he's stepping in it. If you're chasing him, you got to step in it, and you're chasing him down just so you can change his boo-boo. That's Iblis. Iblis, just a spoiled brat of a child that grew to be a shaitan, or the Satan. So again, the essential letters that form his name are from the letters B, L, and S. Now, going all the way back to what we said in the beginning, in reference to the word pressure, in reference to the word pressure, if the letters PRS are interchangeable with BLS, then I ask the question, could Iblis possibly symbolize a type of pressure that Allah has allowed to be put on us? See, we think of these characters when we read about them as being evil personified. You know, Iblis, he's the evil demon, the evil doer. But Allah allowed him to do what he does. So could it be within Allah's divine wisdom and logic that he allowed this BLS creature who's got a connection to the PRS of pressure, for that pressure to be put on the human type, the human being, in order to bring something precious out of us? You liked that, didn't you, for that? And I'm sure there are others who are at least saying to themselves, Alhamdulillah, for that connection. Now, buried within the connections of these letters are ideas related to bursting. You see the BRS in bursting? You see the BLS in blasting, and you see the BRS in the ultimate result of all of that, bursting and blasting, the ultimate result being debris. You see the BRS in that debris? Because the debris is the end result of all of that blasting and bursting of things, right? So the influence that Iblis, whatever that means in the Quran, the influence that that particular force or that particular frequency has been having in the human life experience is what we're talking about. It's going to render some things to become debris that will just be swept away with time, but it will also allow for the correct amount of pressure to be put on the human framework that will hopefully produce a true human standing in qiyam, in the upright form, situated upon true human moral standards. That's the diamond that is supposed to be the result of all of that pressure on the human form. But the fact remains that most human beings will simply be swept away as debris. So let us look at why as we continue.
Assalamualaikum. Can I point something out right quick too?
Please do. And anybody else in the audience, feel free. If you need to point something out that you believe will be a benefit to the group, then join right in.
I interchanged some letters and got the word flush and thought about flushing.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
Can that be connected?
Yes, indeed. Flesh, because the SH interchanges with the S sound. The F interchanges with the P and the B sound. So flesh for sure.
Flush. I was saying flush, like flush the toilet, flush waste down the toilet.
Okay. And I'm saying, I heard you when you said flush.
Flush. Oh, you heard that? and flesh. I saw that one too, flesh too.
Listen, the human flesh has been flushed down the toilet because they put all of the motivations from your flesh in the driver's seat.
Yes.
So that the mind has to take the back seat in the vehicle. And they want your material drive. They want your sex drive. They want all of your flesh drives to be in the driver's seat so that the ultimate destination will be hellfire.
Yes.
They know what happens when they put all of the desires in you. So what we're about to see, without you having known that I was going in this direction with the second surah, or the second ayah in this surah, this drowning that we're talking about now, Al-Insaan lafi khusr. And that says that no doubt human beings are absolutely drowning in a state of loss. Now, what happens to the stuff that you flush down that toilet?
It goes down into the, I forgot what they call it.
Into the commode.
Yeah, the commode.
Yeah, that's right. Into the commode, into the sewer system.
Sewer system, yes.
Yeah, into the system of what they call the refuge.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Alhamdulillah.
So this, dear learners, is the second verse, if you will, of Surah Al-Asr. It only has 3 verses. And again, it's pronounced Al-Insaan lafi khusr. Al-Insaan lafi khusr. And translated again, inna means no doubt. And inna is used by Allah in the Quran, and whenever you see it, understand that Allah is addressing doubters. But he's saying to those who may be doubting for whatever reason, that what I'm about to say to you, there's no doubt connected to it. There's no reason to even question what's coming after inna, because I'm saying to you from the very beginning of my statement as God, that this statement has no doubt. If I said Al-Insaan lafi khusr, and that means human beings are absolutely drowning in a state of loss, then there's no guesswork in that. There's no maybes. See, there's no, well, if Allah said it, then inna, that there is no doubting it. So let's look at this last word here, khusr or khusr. Khusr. Khusr is both loss and being lost. It means both. This statement is the central theme of the surah. And it is a very dark and depressing thesis because it refers to every, listen to this, it refers to every human being, generally speaking. Not to some, but to all. Now, ask yourself the question, am I in that all group? Yeah. If Allah said every human being, meaning the human type, Al-Insaan, the human type. If you are a part of what is being called Al-Insaan by Allah in the Quran, then this statement is for you. So look at, and see, this is just such a wonderful display of what we might call divine psychology that's being used by Allah. And by divine psychology, I don't mean that you can figure out the mind of God. That's not what we're talking about. What I'm telling you is that there are instances of strategies for implementing actions, thoughts, emotions by Allah on his human creature. He's using a particular kind of divine psychology to awaken us to something. And it's obviously something of vital importance, because if he is saying that the present course that humanity is on, based on where humanity started in its beginnings, see, Asr is from beginning to end of time, the whole stretch. Allah is saying that the record that human beings have built up of loss and gain is weighing very heavily on the side of losses and being lost. And that is true for every creature under the banner of Al-Insaan. So again, I say that's depressing, that's dark, that's not a nice idea for human beings to have to live under. But Allah put it just like that because he wants that thought circulating within your brain so that he can introduce the next level of his strategy. Listen carefully. And remember where we started with Imam W.D. Muhammad's comments on the human being being a child of Adam, and how Adam was created as the first human, yes, but Adam was also created as the first prophet, and therefore the prophet nature. I'm quoting Imam W.D. Muhammad if you missed it. The prophet nature is in each and every one of us as human beings. Continuing. So we're not talking about just some human beings. We're talking about all human beings. Now we can stick in the word however. However, Allah has noted only one exception. Now, this is an exception that is being made out of Allah's rahmah, or his mercy on humanity. Let's see what that is. The key to understanding this ayah, and that's the middle ayah of 3 ayat in Surah Al-Asr, the middle. And you know how important the middle is as we've been discussing it. The key to understanding this verse is to understand who Al-Insaan actually is. Not in its positive construction, as most of us like to quote, لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي أَحْسَنِ تَقْوِيمٍ. See, we like going straight there when we're talking about Al-Insaan. But the word Al-Insaan is mentioned in the Quran, I think about 75 times. And the bulk of the times that the term Al-Insaan is mentioned in the Quran, it's not talking about the human being in his and her excellence. It's talking about the human being as a creature who is all of these bullet points that I'm about to read. When Allah discusses Al-Insaan in the Quran, it's in relation to the human type being ungrateful, conceited, self-conceited, forgetful of his origins. And Allah said he created us from dust, turabin, and sperm, nutfa. It's just things we don't even want to be around. Those are our origins, but we have traditionally forgotten those. That the human being is a creature who is greedy. This is Allah saying this in the Quran about the human being. He's a creature who is hasty. He's a creature who is panicky. He panics over the smallest things. He's a reactionary. He's unnecessarily stingy. Allah points out places in the Quran where the human being has been given more than enough and is still stingy with giving to others. Boy, the human being is seeking immediate gratification. He's argumentative. He's quarrelsome for no reason. I want you to start thinking about yourself, myself, and everybody else that you deal with on a daily basis. And understand that most of these traits are probably situated very deeply in the psychology of the average one of us. You might not want to admit it. That's the argumentative part of you. But it's in there. We're quarrelsome. We're defensive, very often for no reason. Allah says they think that every cry is against them, right? That's a feature of the munafiq, the hypocrite. Every time somebody opens up their mouth, oh, they talking about me. Every time somebody in government says something about the government is spending and the welfare, oh, they're talking about black people. Every time, Muhammad said that it's not always racism. He said sometimes it's just your bad behavior that they are responding to. But we think that every cry is racism. Every cry is it's the Me Too movement, because everything these males are doing is designed to set the female back, and we're not gonna have it anymore. Yeah. So this is the human being we're talking about. Defensive, rebellious. Wasn't Iblis rebellious? Then Iblis must be a feature within the confines of the human personality type. Like Prego spaghetti sauce says, it's in there. Yes, Iblis is in you. Isn't that what they report from the prophet? They asked him about the jinn that was in him. Did he have one? He said, yeah, everybody got one. I got one, but I made mine a Muslim. I made mine submit. So Muhammad the prophet was able to conquer all of these frailties that the human type was actually created to be challenged by, is the point. The human being sees him and herself as self-sufficient. We got a certain amount of money. We have a certain amount of prestige. We occupy a certain position at the job, maybe the boss of the job, the owner of the company. And we begin to see ourselves as not needing other people. And the worst part of it is we begin to see ourselves as not even needing God. Yeah, now God is for the poor people, people who don't have. I'm good. I don't know what I need a God for. I'm good. I'm straight. So this is how the human being in his weak thinking mode sees himself. Now let's talk about some of the reasons. The reason for our human deficit is our inability to remember our beginnings. See, if we would think on a daily basis, like as soon as we wake up and say, Alhamdulillah, and start enumerating the many things that we're thankful for, that have been given to us by Allah, even things that people don't normally think about, like their eyesight. Forget the eyesight, what about your eyelashes? Do you know what kind of torture you would go through without eyelashes? What about not just your tongue, but what about the taste buds on your tongue? Forget all of the taste buds. What if Allah just removed the taste, the sweetness, the sweet taste and the salty taste, and left you just with the bitter taste? I mean, what kind of experience would you have with food? Every time you eat food, you couldn't taste the sweetness, you couldn't taste the salt, you only taste the bitter, and whatever that fourth one is. See, you still have your tongue, but we don't thank Allah for the little things that he has given us, right? He gave us an eye, but he gave you a pupil that's able to focus. He gave you a cornea. He gave you an iris. He didn't just give you an eye. He gave you all of these components that if any one of them were missing, you would have a hell of a time operating on this earth. If Allah took away your big toe, if you were born without a big toe, and there are people who are born without toes or have amputations, see how they're faring versus how you fare without thinking about it, walking with 5 toes in front of you, 5 fingers on each hand. There are people who don't have these things, 2 arms instead of 1. People are doing in the world without them, but that's not the best case scenario for how a human being is to adequately function. But we're not thinking about it, and because we're not thinking about how we began as an embryo in the womb, in the mother, and then a belly button cord comes out to attach you. You know, the placenta attaches you to your mother's system. Then her blood and her oxygen and her food substances are feeding you. And it's so amazing. Then you grow into a fetus lump. Allah calls it, it looks like a lump of chewed flesh. He's speaking about the throwaway flesh, right? It's like they compare it in pictures to some bazooka bubble gum that's been chewed and you're about to discard it. You take that bazooka out of your mouth and all those teeth prints in there. It looks exactly like the fetus lump in your mother, in our mothers. When we were fetus lumps, it looks exactly like that, a piece of chewed flesh. Those are signs. Yeah, but you want to know where your sunnah is? Sunnah is from the word sana, and sana means teeth in action. So when your fetus existence was looking like a lump of chewed flesh, that was the beginning of your personal sunnah. So you thought just the prophet had one, right? Everybody got one. He ate it a hama'an masnoon. Everybody has one. All right, moving along. We're going to stay on time tonight. So all we have to do is remember, is the point. Just remember. Remember when you couldn't walk. See, you don't need, Allah didn't even put the memory in you to be able to calculate that far back. None of us remember when we were crawling on the floor. Now, why would Allah do that if he wants us to be appreciative of him? Because Allah has created a social nature in the human being that also wants us to be dependent on information and communication coming from other people. So it takes your mother to remind you. Say, little Negro boy. See, when you start doing something wrong as a teenager, little Negro, I don't want to use the other word, it's Ramadan. I will slap the taste out of your mouth if you do that or say that again, because when you didn't even know your name, I was feeding you. I was teaching you words. I taught you how to walk, how to talk, how to communicate, how to be disciplined. And now all of a sudden you're going to talk back to me in the way that I just heard you talk back, or you're going to make a smirk or turn your body away from me when I'm walk out the room when I'm talking to you. I will slap the wet out of your eyeball before I let you do that to me. See, but why? Because the child can't remember that far back. So he needs to be what? Reminded. What is remind? That's getting your mind back again. When you return, it's turning back again. When you remind, it's getting your mind back because you lost it. And that's what they tell you, nigga, you done lost your mind. Excuse the expression. I couldn't help it. Say, nigga, you done lost your mind talking to me. You need some reminding. So if we do not remember our past, we cannot get a beam on our future. Every other creature was created in complete obedience except for the human being. There's no such thing as disobedience to God's plan and purpose for the creatures outside of the human being. Animals, insects, inanimate creation, sun and moon, star, air, water, fire, doesn't matter. All of these other forms of creation exist within the context of perfect obedience to the creator that created them, except for the one creature that God has given a measure of freedom to, and that is the human being. And that freedom has been given to us as a challenge. So let's continue. We were created with built-in flaws and limitations in what is called in the Quran al-khulq. Khulq. That's a natural creation. So these flaws that we're about to discuss are not, they're enumerated here in the bullet points. These are not flaws that Satan created in you. See, people are always blaming Satan. He's sitting around somewhere saying, damn, I'm bad, but I wasn't never that bad. I didn't do all that stuff they blaming me for. Some of that is them. You know. In fact, Allah says that he will come at the end of time and tell God and say, look, I only whispered to them. I didn't make them do it. I couldn't make them do anything. The only power that you gave me, God, is the power to suggest, the power to whisper. But they took all of those other bullet points that Instructor Bilal is talking about, and they did that. That's from their own nafs. That's from their own nature. I didn't do that. Me and my imps, no, we don't roll on a low level like that. We only exacerbated the weaknesses that were already a part of their makeup. And because they strayed away from your guidance, those things became imperceptible to them. And they allowed the evil to grow and manifest and take over their human lives. Don't blame me for that stuff. You better blame it on the boogie, Mr. Human Being. I didn't do it. So when someone is flawed, the chances of failure are increased. The purpose of revealed scripture is to lighten our burdens and to make success easier to attain if we choose to follow the guidance. See, that's the clincher right there. Life for the human being can become easy street, but only if we choose to follow the guidance. If we are not introduced to the guidance, or if we're introduced to the guidance and we turn away from the guidance of our own accord, then life is going to become a hellhole for the average one of us. If we live this life without Allah, our only goal will be to achieve what we call happiness. Everybody is running around town trying to achieve a state of happiness. That's as far as you can go if God is not your goal. The only other thing that your nature knows is pleasure. He sent you down to an earth that has nothing but the temptations and the lures of pleasurable existence. If you don't understand that because you're from the ghettos of some inner city, then you need to take a trip to Hawaii or somewhere, you know, and to take a look at the palm trees in South America or South Carolina. You need to leave where you are and travel to some other place, as Allah said, and see what was the end of those people before you. They had all of the pleasures of life also, but they lost the mechanism, the main mechanism by which they would come into an elevated existence, and that is their connection with God's guidance. They lost that. So in the Quran, there's no such concept as the pursuit of happiness as we have here in the West. I think they built that into the Constitution of the United States, didn't they? The pursuit of happiness. That's incorrect. It's going to take a Muslim brain to fix that one. The pursuit of happy. Look at the word now. They gave us a penguin called the happy feet, right? The pursuit of happiness or happy is the pursuit of hawa. Look at this very carefully. This H and this P, forget that it's double, just see it as one, is consonantally connected to this H and this W. W is also called a bilabial. P is a labial. W, you can hear it when you pronounce it. Wa, your lips have to come together to say wa, and it also has to come together to say English letter W, W, right? So H and W are the equivalent, the linguistic equivalent of H and P. So look at it. The pursuit of happy then is actually the pursuit of hawa. And what does hawa mean in the Arabic language? It means your low desires, called ahwa in the Quran, from that same word, hawa. Now, hawa is the name, when you give it an additional W, that the scholars of Islam attach to Adam's wife in the Quran, although Allah himself does not give Adam's wife a name. There's nowhere in the Quran where Allah says Adam and the Hawa. Well, Adam, you better go talk to Hawa. It's not in there. The only thing God refers to her as is Adam's mate or zawj, complementary mate. That's it. There's no such name as Hawa or Eve as it's translated into English, as the name is given to Adam's wife in the Bible. Why? Because like we said at the beginning of this class tonight, the Quran is addressing previous scriptures, and it's addressing the issues that have been left on human perception by the misreading of scripture, and also by the additions that have been made to scripture by crafty language manipulators on this earth. They know that the human being is a creature of language, influenced mostly by language and the frequency levels of language especially. So they go into those books and those pieces of information that human beings are most susceptible to, and that's where they do their greatest work, in scripture. But because the Quran in its original form is a protected book by God, they could not interfere and manipulate the frequencies in a way to bring about the same kind of deception that they have done by using language from previous scriptures that were not under that same type of protection from God. So look at Eve, poor Eve. And in case you didn't know, the V, as we mentioned earlier, is a labial. It's a labial. So it connects with the letter W and with the letter P. They are lip sounds, L-I-P, lip sounds. So you might say, well, where is the letter H if Eve and Hawa are the same entity? Well, you find in languages that had a letter H, they usually drop the H, and the H becomes either an I sound or an E sound. But if you check the Hebrew spelling of Eve's name from the Bible, you're going to see that her name is Hava and a Hiva. They pronounce it both ways. So there was an H, but they dropped the H. So she became simply Eve. So Eve means happy. Eve is the pursuit that the serpent himself was desiring. He set his sights not on Adam, who was over in the corner nodding and snoring, I'm sure, because he was put into a deep sleep. So the serpent went after the object of his desires. He looked for what was going to make him happy. And he began to communicate his low devious messages to Adam's partner called Eve. Story for another day, of course. Hawa, so that you'll know, this name itself means air, A-I-R. It represents warm air. Hawa, that's what it means. The word Eve also. Now you might say, well, no, because God gives us the meaning of her name in the Bible, buddy. Her name is Mother of all living. It says that he named her Eve because she was the mother of all living. So I got you there, Mr. Instructor. Her name does not mean air. Well, I say to you, Mr. Learner, what do you think air is? What do you think is mothering all these life forms around you if it's not air? So yes, indeed. Yeah. Air is the mother of all living. And if you understand air on the higher level of symbolic interpretation, you know that air is equated with spirit and spiritual life. So spiritual life is the mother of all living. But when that spiritual life becomes polluted, just like air can become polluted, and if you live in these major metropolises, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I was born and raised in New York, so I know about air pollution. If you're living in London or any of these places, or some other places within the continental United States that have significant issues with air quality, then if they can pollute physical air, do you not think that the manipulators have sought to pollute your spiritual air? We were having that conversation earlier. Oh, I'm not religious, I'm spiritual. Well, you can be spiritual all you want. What if you're polluted spiritual? What if your spirituality has become polluted? Well, how does spirituality become polluted? Because they convince you to divorce your spirituality from any responsibility to people. I believe in God. I don't need you to confirm it. I don't need you to condone it. I believe in God. That's enough. I don't need to be a part of your mosque. I don't need to be a part of your synagogue. I don't need to be a part of your church or your temple or nothing like that. I don't need to deal with people. It's just me and God. I'm spiritual. That's what you think. Your air has been thoroughly polluted. Air was designed to assist the life forms that need oxygen, life forms that need to breathe. And if your spirituality is not assisting community life in that way, where you're helping them get relief, because that's what breathing is on one level. You breathe in, but you have to breathe back out. You take in, but you have to give. You can't just take in. It's just me. No, it's not just you. God didn't create just you. So within the context of your spirituality, if you want to make sure that your spiritual air becomes pure, then make sure that you're not only taking in, but in return giving out. That will purify your spirituality. All right. So a few minutes worth of this world's idea of happiness can bring you years of heartache and misery. So look at what people do in the name of being happy. I'm going to go get this hoe. I'm a married man, but I'm going to go find me a hoe. My wife ain't been treating me right, you know? So I'm going to find bow-legged Sue, bow-legged Sally, bow-legged whoever, and I'm going to get my thing on and that bump it. I don't even care anymore because my wife she ain't cooked me the right dinner last night, and she ain't, whatever, he thinks it is in his mind. She ain't do that for him, so he gonna go get the hoe of the week. And he's happy for about 10 minutes. He's 10 minutes worth of happy until his wife's best friend sees him leaving the hostro, leaving the prostitute den, and picks up the phone and tells on him. And now when he goes home, he's going to experience probably 10 straight years of hell coming between him and his wife. For what? For 10 minutes of what he thought was happiness. So you can't be happy based on this world's standards and values is the point. There's only one true happiness in this world, and that is in this statement, that Allah desires to lighten our burden with the guidance. It's the world that's burdening you. If you have a burden on you that seems impossible to bear, it's not Allah doing that to you. It's the world doing that to you. And you have to learn how to give up your dependence on the world so that the burden that Allah desires that you carry will be seen as something tolerated or tolerable. Now, this is all psychology that we're teaching you tonight. And it's psychology that's designed to keep us in the proper frame of mind so that we don't follow the ways of many people who are slowly but surely losing their minds. In choosing Allah, we are only granted happiness when we know that Allah is pleased, and that is a happiness that does not dissipate. It does not disappear. See, that's the only happiness you should be searching for. The happiness that says, did I do what's necessary to please God? And I don't care what religion you profess to follow. Did I do what is necessary according to the guidance that I say I follow? Am I doing, did I do, will I continue to do that which pleases the Creator? And if I am, that is going to in and of itself produce a happiness that will be true happiness. How do you know it's true happiness? Because it's going to provide a peace in your life. It's going to bring you a sobriety, a sober kind of existence in your mind and in your heart and in your soul, but it's not going to disappear. It's not going to be sometimes. Your circumstances and situations will be up and down, trial and error, for sure. But your commitment to that idea that I am the creature of God and I am going to do my level best to follow what God has put in the guidance that he has delivered through his prophets and messengers. Jesus, Moses, Abraham, Muhammad, what did they say about the human life and how it should be lived? And if I live according to those standards, if I live according to those established values, I'm going to experience a happiness that will have no end attached to it. In fact, it will align itself from this world, and when I die, that happiness will, God willing, increase and extend itself into the next world. Let's continue. That happiness is described by Allah in the Quran as one that will never shatter. That's how Allah describes happiness, the pleasure that we will come into by submitting to his overriding will for us. Because the other happiness that they sell us is nothing but glass. It has a glass ceiling attached to it. And when you reach the height of it, after those 10 minutes, a half hour, 2 hours, 2 months, 10 years maybe of that kind of happiness, wealth, and all of the food you can eat at the Golden Corral every weekend and all, when you reach the end of that, you're going to hit that glass ceiling and your happiness is going to shatter. All of the things and all of the people that you have given your worship to as though they were God, they're going to get old. Some of them will get senile. Some of them will become a burden on your life. Some of them will turn on you and not like you very much, and sometimes hate you. In your family, sometimes people grow up and hate you because you did or said something that you had no business, or, you know, people get real strange as time goes on when they're not connected to the guidance, is the point. And your happiness is merely a fleeting idea when not attached to the creator of those things that should be giving us pleasure, and that is conscious obedience to God. When we choose guidance, see, you choose guidance, it's not conferred upon you. God gives the human being the freedom of choice. And when we choose guidance, we are capable of transforming what is called Al-Insaan, the human life, to an upright position of taqweem. So we mentioned, لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي أَحْسَنِ تَقْوِيمٍ. Certainly, for sure, we have created the human being in the most excellent upright position. That's taqweem, from the word qama, which gives us qiyam, which means to stand. Taqweem means not only standing upright, but it also represents the ability to cause other things and people to stand upright also. See this form of the word here? This prefix ta, as I say down here, as an agent of reciprocity is causing this capability. What is it doing? It's not just you in qiyam or you having your own individual and private set of standards. It means that as you engage others, beginning in your small family circle, as you engage others and you show that you are standing upon a system of standards, then that is going to become infectious. It's going to begin to spread. If you stand on moral ground, it's just a matter of time before anybody in your circle who has any kind of moral sensitivity in them and any kind of rational disposition, meaning that when they hear sense, they might not like it right away, but they keep thinking about it. They keep wondering about it. They keep pondering about it. They ask themselves questions about it. They might investigate it outside of asking you. And they begin after time, because of the goodness that God deposited in their hearts. It's just a matter of time before they will come around to see that the standards are the way to go. All this flippant life, this in and out of, moral one day, immoral the next week, worshiping the purity of God one year and until Christmas time comes, and then you want to be Trinitarian again. And see, that kind of inconsistency is not a good thing. But when you set yourself upon established sets of standards, taqweem, that means you have to have a spine in your back. You ever have to tell a child, man, you better put some spine in your back, get some backbone. The bullies are bothering him. He don't want to fight back. You say, man, you better get some backbone. That's taqweem, because you need a backbone in order to stand up. That's aleph, isn't it, in the letter system? Yeah. So you need that. And that's going to help you cause other people that you come in contact with to put backbones in their back also. Put a spine in their backbone also. Now, Surah Al-Asr is designed to take unwarranted pressure off of you, because it relieves you of the burden of having to be like everybody else. I have to repeat that. Surah Al-Asr is designed by Allah to take unwarranted, meaning unnecessary, uncalled for pressure off of you. How? Because it relieves you of the burden of having to be like everybody else. Now, here's where the issue is. Once our perception of success changes, we are then relieved of the notion that we have to achieve what others who the world has considered to be successful are achieving. So we look at the movie stars and the stars of the stage and screen entertainment, and the politicians, big time politicians who are in the news all of the time for one thing or another. And we think that that is success. We think that the amounts of money that people garner represents success. We think that the fact that people go Google-eyed over some celebrity when they see them on the street and, oh, Michael, and all of that foolishness. We think that that means that that person has been successful. That is not Allah's idea of success. In fact, more than likely, that person has charted out a course for themselves that is leading them straight to hellfire with the gasoline drawers on. You might not have heard that one before, huh? Can you imagine? It's bad enough that you're going to hell, but you are pouring gasoline on your drawers as you're walking in there. You see, the human being is hasty. He likes things right away. Yeah. Now, all we have to do is give up the world's idea of success and accept what Allah says is success. And Allah says that proper cultivation represents success. Falah. And he calls us the muflihun. The successful farmers. What are you farming? You are cultivating the development of your human soul, because it's the soul that's going to be returned to God when the flesh has been flushed. And even if your flush is a royal flush, it won't mean anything with God. It's your soul that he is refining. So if following Allah's laws are making life tougher in your estimation, then you are following the wrong laws. Oh, God don't want me to do nothing. God don't want me to be happy about nothing. God don't want me to have no fun. God don't want me with any pleasures. I gotta just be a rigid. I gotta stay in the prayer all day long. I can't even go to the amusement park because God don't like fun. What kind of foolishness is that? Who made up those laws and sold them to you as religion? But you have some people who call themselves religious people who have, and listen, the Jews are notorious in history for having written into their scriptures all kinds of prohibitions. And the Muslim scholars have not been far behind them. Written into Islam, all kinds of prohibitions that are nowhere to be found in the Quran, even in terms of what's halal and haram. They have attached so many additional halal and harams, or really not even halals, haram. They got lists and lists of hadiths that tell you about what is forbidden, what is forbidden. This kind of toothpaste, forbidden. Nail polish, forbidden. You're going to hell, sister, for wearing some nail polish. You got hair showing beneath your hijab, your little curly hair, sister, you can go to hellfire for that. You're not wearing a burqa where just one eye is showing. You got both your eyes showing. You're taking a chance of going to hell, sister. If you're showing your whole face, you're definitely headed for hell.
I want to add something to that, instructor.
Please do.
So I went somewhere and they said, and it had a sign. It said, in Islam, it is forbidden to pee standing up.
Yeah. You got
In a
that one
masjid.
too.
I was in a
Yeah,
masjid.
you got that one. You got that one also. Yeah. They give you all of this stuff that your common sense should be able to regulate. All right, if it's sloppy standing up and you got time, sit down. But your common sense is going to tell you that. You don't need a hadith claiming to be from a divine source. God sent down a message to the man going into the latrine to sit or stoop and poop or whatever it is No, you didn't need a revelation to tell you that. See, what people are not realizing about the Quran and the reason why it doesn't stipulate all of these details that they give you through these extraneous sources, the reason that it's not stipulated is because God trusts your human common sense that he gave you. He created you with a built-in logic to be able to unravel the reasons for things, doing things and not doing things. And he has set humanity upon a historical journey of inquiry and discovery so that the human being can earn the prize at the end of the day, the proverbial day. Not so that a bunch of scholars standing over you with whips and threats will be the ones to go to Jannah because they kept the little people in line. That's not a religion. That's slavery. Let's continue so that we'll finish on time, inshallah. So discontinue following the wrong logic is the point. For every weakness that Allah has created in us, he's also given us the prescription for overcoming the weakness. So see, this is not a religion that purports that human beings have been created in sin. That's not what the Quran is saying by saying that the human being has been created with a set of weaknesses, a set of deficiencies. That's different than being born in sin. Being born in sin means that that's his purpose, to do wrong. Being born with weaknesses means that that's his challenge on the road towards correcting those weaknesses so that he can stand upright before God. Big difference. So everywhere in the Quran where you read that the human being has one of these challenges that we enumerated during the bullet points, next to or within the context of that phrase or that sentence in the Quran is also the prescription for that particular malady. It's existing right there in the same context. When Allah says the human being has been created weak, he right next to it, he tells you what he needs to do to get stronger. If he says that the human being has been created forgetful, he tells you within the context of those statements what the human being needs to do in order to be more mindful. So he's not just throwing out weaknesses and saying catch as catch can and deal with it whichever way you can. That's not what God is saying in the Quran. He's saying, I created you like this so that you could earn your keep. That's called the Jannah or paradise in the Bible and the Quran. So the prescription, as I said, for all weaknesses, ailments, and deficiencies is in the guidance of Al-Quran. Let's continue. So the third and final ayah or verse of Surah Al-Asr says, إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَتَوَاصَّوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَّوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. Very important wordage. Listen carefully. Now, very often in the Quran, Allah gives us opposites. So in the very same way that he told us that human beings are drowning in khusr, it's called loss and being lost. Human beings are drowning in khusr. Allah put in the third verse the very opposite of what khusr represents. Khusr means that you're lost, but Allah gave as the correction for that state of loss the word Amon. See, illa alladhina amanu. Amanu. That's where we get the word for faith, Iman. This word right here, Iman. They translate that as faith. Now let's look at this. The opposite of loss, or khusr, it's called, is Aman. And it speaks to a peace and safety. This is what this word means. Peace and safety, which secures you and helps you to secure others around you. You see how beautiful that is? It's not only you being brought into an environment of safety. Aman is also your ability to secure others that you love, that you care for, that you've been given admonition to. In doing so, you become a source of light. If I'm leading you out of the dark and I'm leading you into an environment of peace and safety, and the greatest peace and safety a human being can experience is when we are in the light. Look, somebody can tell me that it's safe here, but if I can't see it for myself, I'm still going to have some nervous jitters. I hear a sound, it sounds spooky to me because I can't see. So for as long as you're kept in the dark, you're going to be kept in a situation of lack of faith, lack of Iman. See, we have been taught in religion that Iman means blind faith. You see the words they use? You have to believe in God with blind faith. No such thing in the Quran. Faith in the Quran, by its very nature, suggests that you have to be able to see some things and see them clearly. You have to be able to see clearly enough to reflect on those things to know that they are from God. And that's the basis upon which we accept the rest of what God is offering. No such a thing as just hearing the name Allah and, I just believe it. I don't know what's being said here. I've never read the Quran. I've never had any questions. It just sounds good. So I'm going for it. No, that's not Iman. That's foolish. Iman has to do with something in you that becomes a source of light. Now, in ancient cryptic language, the word Amon means occult, and occult means secret or hidden. And in that regards, Amon represented a source of darkness. But let's look at what they're hiding from the masses. Amon actually represents an open eye that receives the light. You know, when your eye opens, the retina is then open to receive light from an outside source. It is on the back of our American $1 bill. You see that, the big old eye looking at you, looking at it on top of the pyramid on the back of your $1 bill, American dollar bill. That's called the Eye of Ra, and sometimes called the Eye of Osiris. We'll get to him in a minute. So let's break down this word Amon. Allah is addressing it in the word Aman. Illa ladina amanu. He's addressing knowledge that has been in the world for thousands of years, that have influenced societies to think a particular way, to come to certain kinds of conclusions about God and about human life. Allah is straightening it all out in the Quran. So don't look at these words in the Quran and say, well, okay, that has nothing to do with ancient Egypt and it has nothing to do with this Amon Ra guy that you give. Yes, it does. If it has the same consonants and the same concept, oh, yes, it does. It's the Quran taking you out of the spooky tricks that ancient knowledge has put you under because of people who wanted to manipulate your nature and just wring you. Talking about the Al-Asr, talking about the squeeze. We're talking about people who wanted to wring you dry for all of your human capital and then throw you away, or as my brother Fidas said, flush you down the commode. All right. So in the word Amon, as you can see, is the word men or man. Men, plural, from man, right? Well, the word man, as we had been taught years ago by Imam Warathuddin Muhammad, means mind. All of us know that. Man means mind. But here's what Imam Muhammad didn't leave with you. I'm going to finish his sentence, if I may, with your permission. Man means the mind that reflects light, while Amon means the light that men reflect. Let me back it up. If you take the A off of Amon, you're left with man or mind. Mind is what man means, but the mind is designed to simply reflect light. Whereas Amon is the light that men reflect. In other words, Amon represents a particular body of knowledge. Amon represents the body of knowledge that is designed to lead minds. See, I or A means the leading influence over something or in something. So men means the leading influence over the men, or in this case, the minds. What is the leading influence over the minds? It's the knowledge that has been constructed and designed to lead people in the world who follow that knowledge. This is why in ancient Egypt, Amon-Ra was depicted as a sun god, because he was giving light. He wasn't absorbing it like the moon. The moon reflects light. You see, the moon reflects light. Moon and man are basically the same word. If you take the D off of mind, it's min, and min is the ancient word for man. All of that is saying the same thing. This is all the word man, but when you put an A on the front of it, it means that which is leading the man, that which is leading or the leading influence in the life of the mind, in the life of the man, because the man is simply reflecting light that is not an original part of its source or resource. The moonlight that reflects the sunlight doesn't belong to the moon. It's reflecting light. That's why it's moon, in the same way that this is man. Man means mind. What is your mind reflecting on that it created or originated itself? Everything that's in your mind came from an outside light source, outside knowledge, something somebody taught you, your mother taught it to you, your teacher taught it to you, life experiences taught it to you, but you didn't come here with it. You were a blank slate. You understand? So the name Egypt alludes to the eye that is gypped. This E is a prefix and it represents the eye, and gypped speaks for itself. It's when conspirators come into your language in order to gyp you out of your inheritance. And your inheritance is your common sense, first and foremost, and then an understanding of your purpose. So when they can gyp you out of that precious inheritance that comes to you by way of the pressure that time puts on you to bring yourself around to correct thinking. All those who do not reflect, all those who do not understand the composition of that knowledge, the orientation of that knowledge, and the direction of that knowledge are going to be subject to the manipulation that the people who design schemes to contain the majority of masses beneath the glass ceiling of manipulated language. My goodness. Yeah. Empty, void. I'm looking at your notes. This Egypt alludes to the eye that is gypped and is a reference to the common peoples being hoodwinked. You see that word, winked? Winked means that your eye had to close, right? For a moment at least. They are hoodwinking us out of the knowledge or the vision. That's what Egypt means. It means the gypping of the eye, because you're being hoodwinked out of true knowledge and true vision. And that's something for you to think about. Let's continue. Now Allah says, Illa ladina amanu. We dealt with Amon. Now we're going to deal with the next part called the Amal. Wa amilu salihat. Amal. It's from the word Amal. Let's put a little apostrophe here so that you know that's an ayn. So they say those who believe and do good. That's usually how they translate it. Very, very weak. What it is essentially pointing to is goodness, yes. Good works, absolutely. But amal represents works that are performed consciously, with your conscious attention being paid to what it is you're doing, what act you are performing. You can't be doing it just subconsciously. You have to be doing it with conscious attention. Anytime you see a word beginning with the ayn letter, it has to do with the eye that is open and paying attention, whether it's in the word for knowledge, ilm, or whether it's in the word for what God says we were created from in our inception, called the alaq. We're looking at these things as physical properties and science and biology and the chemistry and all of these things, but we're not looking for them as properties within the indivisible context of our human makeup, our psychology, our emotionality, our spirituality. That's where these concepts have their greatest impact. So amal represents acts that are performed while you are paying conscious attention. When you seek to do works like during Ramadan, you say on Thursday or on the weekend, Friday, we're going to go out, spend a certain amount of money and feed people. See, the mistake that Muslims make is thinking that Ramadan means to lock yourself up within the four walls of the masjid and feed yourselves. Where in the world did we get that one from? We think that Ramadan means bump the world for 30 days. I want to get off. And we go to the masjid and just look at each other for 30 days and pray next to each other and make all kinds of supererogatory, this, that, and the other, and stay in the masjid the last 10 days, itikaf, and just stay in the, pray in the dhikr and forget the world, you know, pray in the dhikr and just see each other. Ramadan, Allah says, is the month in which was sent down the Quran as guidance for not Muslims within the four walls of a masjid. It says as guidance for an-nas. You know what an-nas is? The entire society of human beings. Allah said he sent the Quran down in the month of Ramadan in order to situate you so that you can take the guidance that's in the Quran that you're being introduced and reintroduced to on an annual basis. You're supposed to read that guidance, absorb that guidance, and then go out and share it, not with people named Muhammad and Hanif, no, with humanity. So where do you get this idea that you're supposed to lock yourself up during Ramadan within the confines of the masjid? 30 days later, the rest of your family who's not Muslim will see you again. Some people take vacation for the whole month. The job don't even see them. No, you're supposed to be using that month to take your means, your wealth, your food that you love to cook at the masjid. You're supposed to cook that food and feed it to the strangers who ain't got no home over there living in the local park. What happened to those people? Aren't they a part of an-nas? And as you do it, you share the guidance with them. You say, yeah, you like this curry? You like this barbecue chicken leg or whatever? We can't do this for you all year round, but we have something better than this physical food that we can feed you and you never have to run out. And it's called knowledge of God. And here's the address to where we are. You know where we are. We're just 10 blocks up north of here. Come on out to the, are you afraid to invite the homeless people to the masjid? You're afraid to invite the intellectuals to the masjid. So who's left? You don't invite the guy coming out the college dorm to the masjid. You don't invite the guy who ain't got a home, who might have been in the college dorm 2 years ago and circumstances now rendered him homeless or whatever, jobless at least or whatever. And we're not out there inviting anybody to come hear the word of the Quran. And we're not taking the Quran out to them to tell them what's in the Quran. So what really then is the purpose of our Ramadan? Well, let's get to the rest of this surah and we may find out. Alhamdulillah. Thank you guys. Just stretch. You know, this is the 7th inning stretch. We're almost done, but I want to at least complete the ayat of the surah. So there's another word called a fi'l. Fa'ala, from the verb fa'ala. Fi'l, which means actions also. Amal means actions or works, but fi'l also means actions or works. The main difference is that amal represents conscious acts. Fi'l represents those acts that we perform unconsciously. If you ask what they are, you do them all the time. You do them all the time. Breathing is a fi'l. Swallowing is a fi'l. Blinking your eyes is a fi'l. Those are fi'ls that Allah clocked into your instinctive drives. You could do good without thinking about it because that's just your nature. That's a fi'l. When you drive, if you're not really paying conscious attention to where you're going because your body already has been acclimated for where you're going, it started out as an amal, as a conscious motivation, but now when you drive, it's fi'l. You can almost get to where you're going with your eyes closed, driving. Sometimes you get there and you go, man, I'm here already? I don't even remember passing, you know, such and such street, such and such avenue. I'm just in here talking or listening to my music or listening to the recitation of the Quran, my 30th, and all of a sudden I'm home. Why? Because your body was on fi'l drive, not amal. Now, then Allah says, وَتَوَاصَوْا, very important words now. وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. Now look at the meaning for tawasaw. Mutual cooperation among the limited circle God put you in. Let me repeat that. Mutual cooperation among the limited circle that God put you in, beginning with your family circle. So people say, I'm going out to do da'wah, I'm going to save the world with this Quran and the life of the Prophet, and I'm going to, and cousin Bobo ain't never heard nothing from you. Cousin Big Bow-Legged Sue, who was host throwing, you know, she broke away from that because she ended up pregnant or whatever, but don't she need some guidance in her life also? So here you got cousin Bobo, he lives 7 blocks down. You got big leg, bow-legged cousin Sue. You got her number, you know how to find her, but you never invited them to come hear the Quran, Al-Islam, the life of Muhammad, Imam W.D. Muhammad. What's up with that? No, tawassal means that you cooperate with people for sure, but you begin right there under your own roof. If you jump outside of that concentric circle, you're not performing tawassal according to the Quran. Tawassal means that the action is reciprocal. You see, this ta on tawassal is a prefix, and it means back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Like ta'aleem is back and forth. You see the ta on ta'aleem? Ta'aleem means the sharing of knowledge, back and forth, back and forth. That means that if you're teaching a ta'aleem, people can talk back to you. I'm doing a ta'aleem right now. That's why you can interrupt me. But if it were Juma, you couldn't break in. There's no ta Juma. There's ta'aleem. And tawassal means that you can give advice to people, but you should also be open to take advice, even from the people that you're trying to give advice to. In other words, you say, okay, auntie, you've already discovered that you have cancer, lung cancer, and you're still smoking these cigarettes. Now I got to tell you, I got to bring some el-haq to you, auntie. That's not good. You're not really obeying, you know, and showing appreciation to the God that gave you that wonderful body. I mean, you've been in this body for 65 years, and why are you still smoking? And we got to find a way to get you off them cigarettes, auntie. And then your auntie says, yeah, boy, you're right. But you know, while you're on that subject of what to do and what not to do, what about that little wine bottle that I see? What about that reefer smell coming from your room when I pass it on the weekends? You know, that you in there? You allowing your friends to be in there smoke? Well, auntie, I got a little problem with the reefer, but that ain't what I'm talking to you about. See, that's not tawassal. Tawassal means you got to take it the way you dish it, and that if somebody comes to you with reciprocal advice, reciprocal concerns, then you have to bite the bullet and say, yeah, actually, you're right. So I tell you what, auntie, why don't we work on our bad habits together? I'll check on you, you check on me. I'll go to the doctor for your doctor's visit and your checkup. You come on when I have my checkup, and you get the stats on what's going on with me. Because we love each other, we're a family. You helped to raise me. When my mother died or whatever, wasn't there, auntie, you helped raise me. So let's continue to care about each other. See, that's tawassal. Let's move on. I hope y'all are understanding this. So the issues involved in this kind of counsel, which is what it is, are strictly for serious and fundamental matters and never for minor issues. So in other words, don't think that tawassal bil haq means that you are going to go and bother people for every little minor infraction. You understand what I'm saying? You're not going to go and make a mountain out of a molehill to show that you know Quran. Brother, you know, you were just in the salat and I heard your adhan, but you know, you made a mistake when you said hayya alas, you said hayya alas salat. And brother, it's not hayya. And you're saying this in front of people, And the brother's feeling embarrassed. And he just learned the adhan, and he was hoping somebody would compliment him. And it's not hayya ala salat, brother. It's hayya ala salah. He's like, okay. Now that you've thoroughly embarrassed me, you couldn't pull me to the side and say that. But it's such a small issue. Why did you even bring it up in the first place, especially in front of people? I'm just doing too. I'm just enjoining the brother to what is al-haq, brother. Yeah. No, you're not. No, you're not. See, we have to get this thing right. I'm talking to people straight up tonight. We have to get this thing right. Tawassal is only for serious concerns involving fundamental matters. So if you see somebody violating something that you know to be a core aspect of their being, if they're carrying around an attitude or language even, or actions especially, that go diametrically against what we say we are as Muslims, believers in God, the one God. You see somebody involved in some rituals that you know are Buddhist or Confucianism or whatever, and you know that's not a part of the deen, and that person is trying to introduce that into the masjid of believers, the company of believers, that's when you got to go to them and say, whoa, wait a minute. Can you explain what that was you were saying or doing or advising or not doing when you should have been doing it? And then help to straighten them out. Tawassal, listen to this carefully. Your language as a counselor should reflect your own self as the receiver of the advice you're giving others. What do we mean by that? In the conclusion of this, Tawassal is never, ever, ever to blame others for their condition. So even if you're talking to a straight up dope fiend, he's nodding while you're trying to give him advice. You don't never stand over him, berating him about his condition. Tawassal never blames others for their condition. What Tawassal does is it has you use yourself as the example of how to overcome a situation. And therefore, it is important to counsel those to counsel those who are going through difficulties that you have already experienced. So that's what made the nation of Islam in the days of Elijah Muhammad so successful, because the people who were going into the gutters of the inner cities, they were from that life. They could identify with that life. And they didn't have to say, brother, you toe up. You don't look good. You don't smell good. They didn't go out like that. They would go out there and say, brother, you see me? I used to be you. And the reason I can identify with you is because I done been there, done that, and I got the t-shirt to prove it. And here's what I did. I went to Muhammad's mosque. He didn't tell the brother to come to Muhammad's mosque. He said, I went to Muhammad's mosque, brother, and I got myself cleaned up because I realized that this monkey on my back, man, I couldn't carry it for so long before it killed me. And it would be the brother to say, brother, when next time you're going to the temple, the next time you're going to the mosque, can you pick me up? And that brother got picked up like he'd never been picked up in his life. And many of them never came back down from that pickup because the tawassal was more evident even in the days of Elijah Muhammad than it is in many cases among those of us who now say we got the Quran and the Sunnah. And that's a fact. Some things we need to go back to. So it's important to counsel those who are going through different, doesn't mean that you have to have shot dope, but you more than likely have had a situation in your life that was causing a severe challenge for you in terms of your being able to discipline yourself and overcome it. Could have been just you trying to stop cursing. For some people, cussing is a disease. And you thought of all the things you had to do and the psychology tricks you had to play on yourself and to think 5 times before you speak and all those things you had to remember just to stop saying MF in between every other word in a conversation that had nothing to do with M's or F's. You weren't talking about nobody's mother. You were talking about effing nothing or anybody. It didn't have any relevance, but it's in between every other word in your conversation. And sometimes he's talking to his mother. That's how bad it gets. She got to tell him, boy, if you don't clean up that language. They used to go get a bar of soap back in the days, like right before my generation. My mother's generation, they would wash your mouth out with lye soap. You be the horse's horse in the barn, messing around with your grandmother. All right. So, tawassul, lastly, has to do with being concerned about a person's well-being and their future. So you don't go to people with this kind of counsel looking to embarrass them. You don't go to people with this kind of counsel looking to show that you know things and know stuff and have information and have memorized stuff from the Quran and whatever, to show that you know and they don't know and you just want to hold that over them. That's not tawassul. Tawassul is only done from the spirit of cooperation, wanting to share information that you know is going to be good for that person's well-being right now, presently, and into the unforeseeable future. That's tawassul. Now let's talk about haq and saber, and we're through. The last two concepts in this surah. And I'm going to go through this fairly quickly. Haq or al-haq means the undeniable truth or reality. Doesn't mean the truth as you see truth through your eyes. It means the undeniable truth as truth has been created by the author of truth, Allah. Haq also means purpose. It also means justice. I'm showing you all of the ways that it's used in the Quran. It also means justice. Haq also refers to something that is justified as a right given by God. So if you know that Allah has conferred certain rights upon women, certain rights upon husbands and wives to each other, rights even that your children have as adolescents in your household, rights that even if you have slaves, as people did during the time of the Prophet. In fact, slavery wasn't outlawed in Saudi Arabia until 1965. Well, Allah also has built into the guidance the proper treatment of slaves. And the issues related to slavery will naturally be eliminated as a system if they follow the procedure laid out in the Quran for the reduction and the elimination of even the need for slave labor. The word haq refers to anything that has matured to the point where it has met its purpose. So if you purchased a calf, C-A-L-F, from another farmer, and that calf has been fed grain and taken care of in the stall and allowed to walk the field, the meadows and so forth, and gain strength, and that calf then becomes a heifer, that's midway up its development now, but it still hasn't gotten pregnant, it still hasn't produced a calf. Once that heifer becomes pregnant and gives birth to another calf, and that cow, when it delivers, it's no longer a heifer, it's now a cow. That mother cow is now able to produce milk. Well, the purpose of that cow was to produce milk for the farmer. The purpose of that cow was to eat the grass and to keep the grassy areas of the farm down low, manicured. The purpose of that cow was to produce more labor by giving birth to multiple cows. Once that cow has met the major purpose after maturing, that is also referred to in the Quran as al-haq. Now, most people suffering from depression need help in finding their purpose. The reason why you're suffering from depression is because you do not have a clearly outlined purpose. Like that cow has a purpose, like the chicken and all of these other things, the sun and the sky. Everything Allah created, He created with a purpose. But the human being is the only creature that He has created who needs to find his purpose. Everything else has its purpose clocked in mechanically to its structure. But the human being, that's the one thing that's been left out as a deficit. You have to search consciously for what represents purpose in your life. And until you do, and unless you do, you are guaranteed to suffer from one form of depression or another. Guaranteed. Allah has dignified every child of Adam according to the Quran, and He has conferred upon us human rights. You see that? That haq is also something that is justified as a right given by God. Well, human rights have been given by God, and He's conferred them on each and every one of us as individuals, and those rights need to be respected and protected against what? All of these social maladies like racism, sexism, classism, and other forms of unwarranted and unjust abuse. So when we counsel each other as to al-haq, we're counseling each other also as to how we can eliminate or eradicate these social injustices, these social maladies that keep unreality in vogue, that keep non-purposeful activities popular, that keep injustice floating and polluting the air of human society. To stand up for al-haq means to be honest and forthright and straight to the point with your truth. Just to make sure that that truth is pinpointing those things that are necessary to establish undeniable truth, purpose, justice, and the God-given rights that Allah has conferred upon creatures. Even the animals and the insects have rights, according to our deen. And the last word in this context is Saber. Watawasaw bis-sabr. And those who mutually counsel each other regarding patience, constancy, steadfastness. Those are the three major ideas built into Saber. Now, in ancient Arabic, Saber was used to describe a quality of the strong and never a quality of the weak. See, people now think that patience is for those who are suffering oppression and affliction from other people. Brother, just be patient, you know, and maybe your boss will stop teasing you on the job, you know, calling you out your name, and, you know, you got to stay there because you need the money. Just be patient. Or worse than that, giving advice to the woman who is a victim of her husband's physical abuse and having some fake sheikh tell her, sister, you just have to be patient. You know, after all, he is your husband. He does have certain rights over you. He's still paying the rent, sister. He still did he buy you this new little outfit you wearing here? Yeah, he did. Okay, it's all about, okay. So we'll talk to him about his abuse. But in the meantime, sister, in between time, just practice Saber. No, that's not Saber. Let's look at what Saber is. It was never described as something that weak people were forced to tolerate. It represented those who were capable of arguing back, capable of taking revenge, capable of fighting back, capable of defending themselves, etc., etc., but who did not do so, even though they were capable. Now, think about Saber as a sub. You see the English word sub in there? That'll cause you to remind it in your, to remember it in your English brain. So when you think Saber, think sub. Sub means beneath. So think of Saber as a substation in your emotionality that forms the foundation for the rest of your personality. In other words, if you want to have a stronger personality, if you want a stronger sense of purpose and willpower and all of that, then understand that Sabar is the undergird for all of those other emotional conditions that you're looking to strengthen. And even though you're able to kick butt, you just look at that fool and keep on stepping and just say salam on him. You know you can whip his butt, but you don't. You refrain and you restrain yourself. And every time you do, you're building up the foundation of sabr in your emotionality. There is a secondary sabr that is exercised when no defense is available. However, that secondary sabr is strictly related to calamity, never to people who oppress. So Allah speaks about those who are practitioners of patience during all periods of panic. See, that's the difference. That's calamity. Never in the Quran does Allah ask any of us to be patient while we're being abused by other human beings. Never. It's not a condition that you have to tolerate when another human being is oppressing you. Sabr is not something that we practice in the face of oppression from human oppressors. Allah gives you rights over oppressors, and He gives you strategies for how to deal with their oppression. Sabr, lastly, is the opposite of losing hope, and therefore the opposite of the root letters for Iblis, because Iblis' name, Balasa, that root, means to give up hope. So Sabr is giving you the opposite of what Iblis is representing. So that means that the Sabr should be increasing you in hope, in aspirations, in ambitions. The more Sabr you practice, the stronger your aspirations are going to become. The more Sabr you practice, the stronger and the more focused your ambitions are going to become. That's when you begin to really benefit from the rewards of God. A person who is experiencing tough times in a way that actually makes them become tough is experiencing sabr. Let's repeat that and then close out. If you are experiencing tough situations in front of you and you are practicing sabr, meaning that you can do something hasty about it, you can cuss out somebody, you can go upside somebody's head, you can talk about somebody's mama till the cows come home and get away with it because they can't do nothing to you. But you decide to consciously pay attention to the patience particles in you, in your personality, in your emotionality. What's going to happen is that those tough times, that holding back, man, I wish, no, I'm glad I didn't say anything. See, that holding back when you could have said something, you could have defended yourself, but it just wasn't. Look at the person you're dealing with. That's not even worth retaliating. This weak piece of mess in front of me is not even worth my time and attention. Now, if it has some greater consequence, somebody's going to be harmed or something, then yeah, you speak out. But if it's just that dude or that dudette, talking smack as they normally do, and nobody seems to be able to bring them around to respect, common social values and relationships and that kind of thing. And that's just they're just deciding to die with that weak, stupid personality that they've been showing. And you just practice sabr, and that the toughness of you having to hold back from what you really want to say is actually going to make you tough so that you can handle other situations that you don't even know are around the corner waiting for you. That if you had not built up the tenacity by practicing on this small issue or these sets of small issues, you've now built up the toughness and the tenacity to be able to handle something major that Allah brought your way that may have mowed you down and run you over had you not had that foundational integrity. So this is Surah Al-Asr. These are the ones who will be successful, the ones who respond to Iman, the ones who consciously do good works that reconcile, that bring things together that Allah intends to be together. That's Amilu Salihat. We didn't get a chance to speak about Salihat, but it represents reconciling deeds, not just good deeds, but you're to actively look for things to do that bring people together that should be together. If you're fighting on the side of racial equality and gender equality, they call it, but it's really just the respect that each one of the genders is due by virtue of the way Allah created us and the roles that He created us to perform. If we're fighting for those things that should be reconciled, if you're fighting against men and women being together, then that's not Amilu Salihat. That's Amilu Salih plot. That's somebody's scheme. Whoever is in the world seeking to break those things apart that Allah has ordered to be joined together, Allah says in the Quran that He's placed a curse upon them. Cursed are those who break asunder what Allah has joined together. So if you know He joined male and female together, how can you dispute that? So to break it up with some neutral gender that Allah did not create, that's a problem. To tell ethnic groups of people, because they have slanted eyes and you have big round eyes, you're not supposed to be together. You're not supposed to share in God's resources together. Matter of fact, they're less than you. You should go take what they got. That's how so-called racists have performed in the world for centuries. You're smarter, you're bigger, you're darker, you're whiter, you're cleaner, they're filthy. And they have broken apart all of those areas of human life that God intended to work together. Allah said He created us that we might be curious about each other. We're not supposed to be despising each other. So if you're on the other side of the fence and you're continuing to stand up for those things that bring humanity down, you're going to go down with the big drown that we mentioned earlier. Khusr. Al-Insaan lafi khusr. That's the part of humanity, that major part that's not paying attention. They don't care anything about God's guidance, and they don't care anything about social equilibrium. They're all about what benefits them personally. Well, they're going to be going down in the whirlpool action of the proverbial toilet, like that witch in The Wiz. You remember that? She sat on that big throne, and it ended up being a toilet. Eveline. You see Eve in there. They put their signs everywhere they go. Eveline. She said, "Don't nobody bring me no bad news." And I'm telling you that the Quran represents good news, and that goodness is on the rise. So in a nutshell, Allah is advising us to acknowledge the reality, your reality, and then to get tough in your response to what God shows you to be your reality. Do a self-assessment. Where am I now within the context of the world and where the world is going? What is my personal contribution to the upliftment of the world, beginning with my small circle? What have I done? What have I said to reconcile with my wife? When was the last time I picked up the phone and called my young adult children who live in a different state? When was the last time I addressed a concern that somebody brought me that I kind of just shoved off because I didn't want to deal with it and I didn't want to hear it? You don't live with me. You don't pay my bills. Yeah. When was the last time I actually dealt with that issue? When was the last time I actually pulled my imam to the side and said, listen, I got some information I want to share with you. There's this class I've been attending, and I'm telling you, man, I'm getting a lot out of it, but I consider you to be brilliant. I can imagine what you get out of it. Here's the number, here's the date, here's the time, here's the brother. See what you can do with that. When was the last time we made efforts to really bring about serious and beneficial reconciliation among ourselves, with the neighbor next door, with the people up the block, down the street, around the corner? That's where we need to start. And if we do so, we will not have to necessarily be a part of this great elimination. That's all Al-Asr is really discussing, what Imam Muhammad called the great elimination. Choose to be a part of the great illumination. And that illumination begins with the illumination of your brain. Learn, differentiate yourself from those people who don't know and don't want to know. There's people who don't know but want to know. That's fine. It's okay to not know, but it's not okay to not know and then reject knowledge when it comes, even if it is your imam doing that. Now, I ain't never heard of him, but I ain't got time for that, man. I got all the knowledge I want sitting on the shelves of my bookshelf at home or in the masjid. I got the 40 hadiths, and I got, all of the sunan of this one, the other one, this guy here. What has he done? Is he in the history books? Oh, you talking about Bilal, instructor, the guy that calls us? Oh, come on, man, don't bother me with that. Oh, okay, keep moving. Keep it moving. But start somewhere. And you're going to find that some of those people who you might have thought were not going to be receptive are going to become some of our best support, because the ones I run into, at least, are highly intelligent people who have a very serious respect for what Imam W.D. Muhammad has left us as an inheritance. And the more you study his language, the more you're going to recognize that language, even if it's coming from somebody who you did not have a shared experience with when you learn the language. There are people yet to be born that are going to become our teachers. Some of them are 3 years old. Some of them are in the bellies of their mothers right now. They're going to live, if we live long enough, inshallah, we're going to live to see them become our teachers, our imams, our ministers, our rabbis, our preachers. And right now, we just playing with them on the rug, throwing the ball and watching them catch it. They may grow up to be the most brilliant and progressive mind that God has blessed to come into our circle. And that's what we pray for. So if anyone has any questions, this is the time to unmute yourself and ask before we conclude with a dua. And I apologize for keeping you longer than I anticipated. Thank you. I'm not sure who we have with us, but we got a handful here. So just open up your mic and ask your question.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam.
Ramadan Mubarak.
Ramadan Mubarak.
Thank you, instructor. That Surah Al-Asr has been expanded by your sharing this evening, and alhamdulillah, and I see that the earlier we can be told and to grasp that Allah created us for service, that helps us, in a framework to find our purpose. And I remember the first time I heard you add to that surah in the rendering a purpose to haq, and that was very insightful to me, and thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you for that comment. Much appreciated. And that was Michael Hameen, for those of you who didn't know, one of our regular and the most talented of learners And I appreciate his comments every time. I'm blessed to hear them. Privilege and an honor for all of you to be on the line tonight. So anyone else who has a question or a comment, this would be the time to ask. So I must have been pretty thorough.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam.
I just wanted to point out a couple of things that came to mind in a couple of parts. In the beginning, where you touched on pressure, precious.
Yes.
I thought about person, perception, precipitation. Now, those are those words start popping out my head.
Yeah.
At the same time when and also the connection along with the PRS, flush and flesh. So I wanted to point out that, but those can those be connected? Person, perception, preception.
All of them are connected. Anytime here's the rule. If you find consonantal connections, they're going to have related meanings. It's your job to ponder.
Yes.
Your job is to ponder. Person, see, if you know what the word means, then you can go to it right away. Person is a combination of two words. It means per sonaire, or by way of sound.
Yes.
And if you understand the dynamics and the mechanics of how sound occurs in your ear, you'll understand the connection to pressure.
Yes. Yes. Exactly.
Right? Yeah. So all you have to do is take it off of your living room table and put it on the science table, and you got it. Even if you go to FLSH, which we said was flesh, connected also to the PRS. When people understand the consonantal connections, they'll see it right away. Well, your flesh is impressionable.
And yes,
you can leave an imprint in your flesh.
Yes.
So pressure affects the flesh. If you don't believe it, ask anybody who's been stopped in the wrong way by a policeman and has had that pressure put around their neck, or have had their handcuffs cuffed too tightly around their wrist. You'll understand that your flesh responds very quickly to pressure. And remember now, every word connected to press is in this scope of understanding. So we talked about depression.
Depression. Yes.
Oppression. Suppression. All of those are varying degrees of pressure. Even in the religion, they talk about the prophet as having been pressed 3 times by the angel Jibreel when he was first introduced to him, right?
Yes.
They say that he was pressed. See, they use that word intentionally.
Yes.
And Allah says he created the human being from impressionable clay. Clay that allows you to leave an impression. When you touch it, when you mold it, when you put your thumb in it, it leaves an impression. And again, when you connect it to Iblis with the BLS, being connected to the PRS, then you should begin to understand that Iblis may have been created also as an indirect form of pressure on the human nature, that jinn nature, an indirect impression upon the human nature to help the human nature evolve and become more and more excellent.
Instructor.
Yes.
Waleekum
assalam.
All right. One of the things that came to my mind was Saber. Of course, being there are a lot of connections there with the word diet and the nature of the word diet being suppressed and oppressed.
Wow.
So just want to put that out there.
Yeah, well, there's definitely a consonantal connection in the word Saber and the word Saper, and they talk about the last meal shared socially with the prophet Jesus as being the last supper.
Supper.
You know what that
Amen.
last supper is called in the Quran with Jesus and his disciples?
The Eid.
That's
I mean,
right.
Eid.
That's right. Ma'idah from Eid.
Eid.
That was their Eid, right?
Yes.
So indeed, and if you can imagine the kind of sabr Jesus had to have with those people, especially with it, they say one among them was a Judas on top of that. And I'm going now with the Bible story where they say they were about to crucify the man and his own disciples didn't even show up. They said,
Mm.
and the one who did denied him.
Mm.
They said when this cock crows 3 times, Peter is going, your best is going to deny you, Peter. That is impossible. And the cock crowed. And Peter said, I have no idea who this man is here. They said, you know this man? No, I had no, he looked familiar, but I don't know, So imagine what kind of supper Jesus had to have after the Last Supper. And then you can go on to connect it to even super, because Saber is going to give you some super abilities in terms of strengthening up that toughness. So no, wherever they are connected consonants, you're going to find connected logic. That's a guarantee.
Yes. So another thing came to mind was when you were saying about the when you was talking about Eve, and oh yeah, you were saying about the spirit. Oh yeah, when we were talking about spirit, people say this spiritual and not religious, and you were saying spirit. Somehow spring came to my mind. Spring, like the season. Spring, somehow spring and spirit. When you was talking about spirit, spring came to my mind, and so what brought that to my mind was, okay, they call, so is this a connection with them why they name fall and autumn, speaking to the fall of Adam? So I don't know. I was just that came to my mind, so I wanted to point that out. Also,
you do know. That's why.
but the same letters are there. The same letters.
Definitely, but I'm going to show you something you missed. Normally in the English language, when you have a T at the end of the word, like you do in spirit, the T is actually a suffix. It's serving the same purpose as tar marbuta in Arabic.
Oh, okay.
Feminizing the word. So even though they will tell you that English does not have masculine and feminine connotations, they do. But they are secret.
Yeah.
They're secret. They're placed in there in secret. Now, spirit, if you divorce the T from the word, and now you have what?
Spear.
No, give me the other consonants.
For spirit, okay, you have SPR and
That's
T.
it. Take off the T.
Yeah, they take out the T. You have SPRs.
Now compare your SPR to your SBR.
To my S what now?
SBR, like we have in Saber.
Saber, yeah, exactly. Saber, yes.
So that means that there should be some relationship.
Yes.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
And listen, let's go further.
Woo! I just saw something else.
Let's go a little further. Where did we start out?
Alhamdulillah. Yes.
What did we start out with?
We started out with pressure. Am I in the beginning? Pressure.
All right, and give me those letters. What are those 3 letters?
PRS.
Okay, and what are the 3 letters in Saber?
RC.
What are the 3 letters in Saber?
In Saber, SBR.
Okay, give them to me again in pressure.
Pressure is PRS.
And what are they in Saber?
They are SBR. So the P interchangeable with B. R stays the same and the S stays the same.
So there must be something about Saber that includes pressure.
Yes.
But if you stick with it, it's going to make you more precious. Isn't that what we said about the toughness?
Yes, yes,
You see how these things go?
yes. And I just saw also okay, Saber. If you of course we just interchanged those. So Saber SBR, and then if you have SPL, or you can change that around and make that PLS, and you can get the English word pleasant.
That's right.
Pleasing.
That's
In
right.
connection with what I was just that made thought about that with spring or
Mhm.
spring spirit.
Or you can keep it SBL, and now you have the Arabic word Sabil.
Sabil, exactly. Yes.
So there
Wow.
must be some pressure on the Sabil.
Yes.
In fact, for you to even walk the Sabil, you got to put
Sabil.
pressure on your feet.
Yes. Because the Sabil is the straight line, like walking a tightrope, correct?
Horizontal.
There you
Horizontal. Oh,
go.
that's the horizontal one. Okay.
There you go.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, the Sirat.
I mean, oh, that's right. That's right.
Yeah,
Yes.
the Sirat is different now. But the Sabil is the public road.
It's the public. Oh,
It's not
yes.
the private road
It's
of
not the
your
private road. It's
individual
right.
ascension like Sirat.
Yes.
It's the public
Yes.
road where it's like what's that movie with Will Smith when he was the only one? He thought he was the only one left on Earth,
Oh yeah.
and he kept walking.
Mhm.
You remember he
Wow.
went? Yeah, he went into this cave, and a whole bunch of demons came out, and they had money all on the ground. And my wife was just talking about. It. I keep forgetting the name of this movie.
I know exactly what
Yeah,
you're talking about. I know
but
that
in any
movie.
case, all he had to do was keep walking, and he was going to eventually run into another person like himself. That's what the Sabil is.
Yes.
Yeah, all he's got to do is be patient. He's going to run into another person like himself because the straight path is the social path. Got
Yes.
it? Yeah. The straight path is the social path. Now, you might run into some sociopaths on your way down the straight path or down the social path, but the path wasn't created for sociopaths. It was created for those who want to walk the social path. That's what the Sabil is. I'm gonna give it to you in Imam Muhammad's words. He said that the Sabil of Allah are represented in institutions. It is institutional development. So you cannot say that you're working fi sabilillah, you're working in the path of Allah if you haven't established anything to be left behind in the institutions.
Yes.
You don't have a museum, you don't have a library, you don't have a school, but you want to say that you're working fi sabilillah,
Yeah.
not according to the truest meaning of the word. Because sabil is a path that allows you to engage in other connections that are social like you, and that you serve the interest of the social community that you're part of as you walk that path. And
Yes.
also there has to be a fountain or a well attached to that path where you can stop and get yourself a fresh drink of water. So if you're
Yeah.
walking a path that's all rational and you don't have any moral concerns, you just want to learn, that's not the Sabil. It's got to have attached to it a water component, a place where for you to quench your moral questions and your moral concerns, and a place where if you've gotten too dusty on the road, like Allah speaks of in the Quran, the man who is dust ridden because he's been walking so long on the road, you have to have a place of reprieve where you can stop and get cleaned up a little bit.
Yes. Yes.
That's the Sabil, but it's all connected to the pressure.
Yes. Alhamdulillah.
Yeah, and if you can handle the pressure, in the end, you're going to be pleased.
So that makes me want to look and see if is the word when the prophet was squeezed, is that the same word I haven't ever read any but in the Arabic books and of the Surah when they speak of him being squeezed, but I'm pretty sure it have to have a connection with because okay, now this will maybe what I'm thinking of. So because when the Quran speaks of revelation, and Zella, it's coming down.
Mm-hmm.
Something just came to my mind about I wonder is that pressure, it is that pressure, is it kind of related to like the pressure in the that we get that goes on before
Well,
it rains?
yeah, they talk about air pressure, right? The air
Yes.
currents and the air pressure.
Yes.
Pressure is a big concept. I'm not sure what the word is in Arabic that's used for describing the prophet being under the pressure of the initial revelation. I'm not one, and I'm not saying this to you so that you will just follow me willy-nilly. I'm just telling you what I don't believe. I don't believe that story is meant to be literal. I don't believe that there was a picture of a big old angel with a wingspan who came and grabbed the prophet on the, the way they describe it, it was almost a molestation.
Yes.
Described. It was almost that's frightful. And I'm like, why would God do that? That's the best thing you could find to introduce to this sand Arab who doesn't even know anything about Revelation. So they say, right? They say he couldn't read Revelation. This is the best way God could find to introduce this. And the reason why you might say, well, how can you talk about the prophet? I'm not talking about the prophet. I'm talking about a story that I believe they made up to appease the wandering minds of hordes of people who began to enter the deen. This is not a story that came along with the Quran. There's nothing in the Quran about squeezing the messenger.
Yeah.
It only says, Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq. There's nothing in there about him having to say it 3 times. Allah repeats things in the Quran. He could have said, Iqra, Iqra, Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi. That's not in there. So I'm saying that sometimes good intention or well-intentioned scholarship has invented stories that we now accept as el-haq that are not in the range of absolute truth. They are stories like what do you like Aesop.
Yes.
They're fables that are intended to reinforce what you're learning in the Quran, but the mistake that they made is in presenting it as though it was actual fact, when in fact it was not. So that's my only gripe with them, that I don't stick. I understand the symbolism, so I can tell you what 3 pressings mean.
Yes.
There's a psychology built into that language. We can tell you what these things mean. We can tell you what the wingspan means. Remember, Muhammad has broken all of these things down over a period of 33 years. And he's given us enough hints and clues to know what to accept and what to say, wait a minute, I need to check that out further before I just wholesale start teaching that to my children.
Yes.
So it's another part. If it was an important part of the agenda of the Quran, it would have been in the Quran. Yes.
Inspector Bilal.
Yes.
Assalamualaikum. How do you know when you've reached this? How do you know when you've reached the state of being Sabaroon?
You'll know. Your tenacity will tell you. You'll look back 10 years ago and you'll say, man, that would have crumbled me. That would have crushed me had I had to deal with that 10 years ago. But look at how easily I'm able to move that obstacle out of the way. Now, I know they're trying to get on my nerves. I don't even respond.
Assalamualaikum. May I share something?
You'll know. Well, let me just make sure she was finished with her question or comment. Patricia, were you finished?
I just was reading about Saber, and the Quran is listed like 102 times. So it's a really important thing for people to practice Saber. And there's something about, in the Quran said something about 3 different levels of practicing Saber. And I have a real problem with Saber with some people. Mm-hmm. And you were saying something earlier about Allah doesn't require us to be patient when people are being oppressive to us, or
That's right. That's right.
So I have a real problem being patient with people when I see them doing something wrong.
You're not supposed to be
A
patient with
sister
people who
was
are doing something wrong.
a sister was at the table. Like we have this iftar every night, and so the table was set up for everybody when they come in to break their fast or all different kinds of things. And so this married sister was sitting at the table. You know, the men sit by themselves and the women sit, you know, in little circles or whatever. So she wanted to take this food off the table that was placed in front of my seat. So an African sister was like, "Oh no, you can't take her food." So she was taking the food and giving it to her husband. She wanted her husband to have it because the men, obviously, they didn't have the same things that we had. And she wanted her husband to have this. And I said to her, I said, "Why would you take my food and give it to your husband without asking my permission? Why did you do that?" And she started telling lies. And I just, you know, said to her in a very loud voice, "Astaghfirullah, you know, you're lying." And later, I didn't even want what was in front of me. It was just the idea that this person lied about her reason. If she would have said, "Well, I wanted my husband to have it," and which I eventually, I gave it. I said, "Which one of these children at this table with us are yours?" And she said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Which one of them is your child?" And so she told me who her daughter was. I gave the food that she was originally going to try to give to her husband that I took back. And I said, "I want you to take this to your father and tell him that I sent it to him." And so the mother was saying, "Oh, no, no." Now she doesn't want me to give it to him now. I was like, "No, I want him to have it because I don't even want it." But it was just the idea that maybe I'm at the Saber stage.
Well, let me
Because
say this. Let me say this, because I think you're mixing up two concepts that we already discussed, and that is that any level of oppression coming from people, for you to tolerate that and be patient with that, is not the idea of sabr that's in the Quran. The Quran's idea of sabr is on two basic levels. The first one is with withholding yourself from doing something that you know you have the strength to defend yourself against. That's the first thing. You know that if need be, you can address this adequately and it'll be done with, but you're measuring the cost involved in doing that. You're measuring the confusion that it could cause. You're measuring a whole lot of other things that are going through your head that make you say, "No, this is not the time nor place." Now, if you're handling it like that, then that's summer. If a person is truly disrespecting and oppressing you, socially oppressing you, embarrassing you, and that kind of thing, then it merits you saying something about it, and you're not breaking your sabr by addressing an issue that you need to address because it may happen again, number one. Number two, you may be helping that sister to understand something about herself that has gone overlooked for many, many years in her life. You got to remember, a lot of us, and when I say us now, I'm talking about Muslims, are socially undeveloped. We are that mudga that I mentioned earlier, not by name, but that piece of that lump of chewed flesh is called the mudga. You can even hear in the pronunciation of that word that it's something nasty, like, right? Mudga, you know, something, yeah. That's how many of us are in our social development. We're not socially whole or socially mature. We have grown up bodies, but internally we're not there. So you have to be able to, here's the word I like to use for our English brains. When I talk about saber, I give the English word sober. You see how close that is?
Ooh, sober.
Yeah, because it's a situation dealing with your emotionality. you are setting the foundation for your emotional sobriety. You want to remain emotionally sober, and you don't want this situation to cause your senses, your emotional senses, to become drunk. Because if you get into a shouting match and you get angry and you start saying stuff that you normally don't say and language you usually don't use, then that person has caused you to become emotionally inebriated, emotionally drunk. So you got to bring yourself back to your sober self. And that's where Saber comes in, because you want to maintain that sobriety. You following what I'm saying?
Yes, I also had another incident where African guy
You
backed
got to
into
make
my
this one a
car.
little shorter, though, because we way past time.
Okay. Eventually, I don't know what he wanted, but he said he was fasting. I don't know if he was fasting or not. He backed into my car and he started yelling and screaming and calling me all kinds of names. And I said, listen, I'm not going to argue with you. Let's call the police. Like, he was in the wrong. So when he saw that I was calling the police, he got in his car and he drove away. Now, had I not been fasting, I may have handled it a little differently. Because I told him, look, you need to get out of my face, because I would go and look in my glove compartment or something, or take my mace out or something, and just, and
Yeah,
I
we're
guess,
dealing with a lot of strange people in this day and time, even the ones who
yes,
as Muslims. So you got to be very careful.
Muslims.
You got to be very careful, especially as a female Muslim in the time that we're living in, especially in areas where there's a big mix of different people from different places.
Yes.
So we don't just say because they say they're Muslim that they're safe to be around.
They're not.
That's not necessarily the case, but just keep your eyes open.
Okay,
Not just
alrighty,
one.
Thank
Keep
you.
both of them open and in front of you, and exercise your peripheral vision and all the rest of that stuff that Allah gave you. And just do your best to protect your own interest and stay away from people and circles and company that you've had issues in or with. If you had an issue there and the people who were sponsoring that iftar did not address it adequately after bringing it to them, then just choose not to go there, because obviously there's something about the atmosphere that is polluted, and it's not a situation that you want to go back into. You don't have to go into that. There's no mandate to be at an iftar.
No, not.
In fact, if we were to follow the strict practices of the Prophet, we wouldn't be at any iftars except the one in our home.
Mm-hmm.
He came out once to a Tarawih. This is reported in the Hadith. He came out once to a Tarawih, and I guess in his spirit, he said, "I'm out of here." And they said he went home in his closet, whatever that means in the Hadith. He went home in his closet and made his prayers, his Tarawih. So there's no mandate. That's traditional. And they asked Umar, I believe, about the Tarawih, and they said, well, this is bid'ah. The Prophet didn't establish this. He said, yeah. He said, but it's a good bid'ah. So there are people screaming at us about bid'ah. Imam Muhammad's community, bid'ah. Right? And here they have in the history of their own literature, one of the major caliphs, as they call them, who instituted bid'ah and was proud to do so. We've never done that so boldly like that, to say the Prophet never did this, but we're going to do it because it brings people together, and that's the justification. And they use that same justification for probably at least 85% of other stuff that they introduced that you think is Islam, that has nothing to do with what the Quran teaches or what the Prophet established. But we go for it because we said, this is going to be better for us. We decided, not Allah, not in the Quran, not the Prophet's words. We decided that this is going to be better for us. So no, you follow your common sense and do what's in your best interest. Try not to harm anybody unnecessarily, but don't let anybody, especially when you know the right there in front of you. And when you need to put some righteous pressure on some of the men that's supposed to be in that room.
There's Ramadan Muslims out now. You won't even see these people after Ramadan. They'll just go back into the woodwork wherever they came from.
No, but some of them, I tell you where you'll be able to find some of them. You'll be able to find them in the CIA office, the FBI office. That's where they work during the evening. They come out during Ramadan just to disturb you and see what you're doing.
Okay.
See how many of your children are progressing. What better time of year to come out and see who the real smart ones are? You know, who's making all the progress. You know, is there a young guy here teaching the ta'aleem? We got to keep our eye on him. He might be the next W.D. Muhammad. They even check out your rap music. Say, what's he talking about? What again? Send me the lyrics. We might have to put a stop to this one. He's taking shahada in his rap music. This is dangerous.
Thank you, instructor. Alhamdulillah.
Yeah.
Brother instructor. Brother instructor.
Yes.
Sister Murad.
Yes.
I just wanted to bear witness to what you were just saying. I found at one time in doing some research that during my time when I was National Director of Education, I was on a list that spoke about my being one of the top women in the Nation of Islam. And it was saying what I was doing.
Yeah.
And, you know, so I'm just saying that to bear witness to the fact that there's people all around us checking us out and seeing what we're saying and doing.
Wow. Let me tell you something. This little class that we have called the University Online Learning Course is probably one of the most listened to groups of people among Muslims in America.
Yes.
Maybe with the exception of the terrorists, the people so-called terrorists and the people who are really plotting to undermine stuff. The reason why we're allowed to just exist and continue in what we're doing is because there are also elements in the government and in other places that are actually coming into a newfound respect for good people.
Right, right.
And they realize that they can't have a functional society unless they at least have a balance of both. You can't have all evil people running around trying to run the world.
Right.
And unless we show ourselves to be of some real threat to the system itself, they're not going to bother us.
Right.
I know the signs, so I know that they exist, and I know that they know that every phone call I make, I know that, and I'm, hey, you guys are on my phone calls, aren't you?
Yes.
So, as the song says, your kiss is on my list. But what I'm saying to you is, don't let that bother you.
Oh no, no. Don't
let it disturb you at all. As Imam Muhammad said, it shouldn't bother you that people are spying on you and all. He said, as long as you're doing the right thing.
Right, that's
he
correct.
Said the only time it should bother you is when you know you're not doing the right thing.
That's right. That's right.
Now, obviously, you don't want them spying through your window and all that. But look, this world is so sophisticated, technologically speaking. They can be on top of the Empire State Building and aim something in your direction and hear everything you get. They don't have to be outside your window.
That's right.
They don't have to be outside your door. You know, listen, they got ways of doing everything that they feel they need to do without even intruding upon your privacy.
Right.
Technology supports it now. But they've been spread so far and wide. It's another thing I heard Imam Muhammad say, that they have been spread so far and wide that they don't even have the manpower anymore.
Right.
To do what they used to do to you back in the original Nation of Islam days.
That's
they just
right.
don't have if they wanted to, they couldn't track it because there's too many of us now.
Mm-hmm.
So
yes, sir.
Keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
And feel good about it.
Yeah.
Yes,
I heard Imam Muhammad say, well, he asked a question, and he asked, "What do you know? What group of people respect me the most?" And he said, "The intelligence department people."
Yes.
That's a fact.
There's one comment I wanted to make, instructor.
Yes, sir.
About dealing with the Sabil, the pressure, and patience. We can't control what people may do or say about us, but we can, and this is part of patience, control our response to it.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Beautiful.
Right.
Absolutely beautiful.
And that
You
was
know,
something. Go ahead, sister.
I just wanted to add to that when I accepted the position of coming out to Chicago to work with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, I was working for National Head Start. So they used that as a excuse. They actually flew me down to Washington to speak with the, and right now I I don't remember his exact title, but in a sense they were asking me did I know what I was doing, and offered me a position, any position that I wanted throughout the country, like if I wanted to go to California or Arizona or whatever. And it was, he looked me straight in my eyes. And but the funny part of it was if the people who understand, at that time we called them the blue-eyed devil. And it just happened that this particular man had stark blue eyes, blonde hair, and very white skin. So, when I look back on some of these things, it's all praises due to Allah.
Indeed.
But I just wanted to, point out that these things have been happening over and over, to different individuals.
For sure.
For sure. I want to go back to something that Wali mentioned
Yes, sir.
when he was speaking on the Sabil, because I want to ingrain in your brains the process for
Yes,
coming
sir.
up with these connections. These are connections in the logic. See, this is the real religion, or the realigning of logic and logical connections that religion is supposed to be teaching. And he mentioned the SBL in Sabil, and we've been talking about that all night, beginning with the PLS, right? And when you about to go paint the town red, as they used to say, and you're going to put on your glad rags, you remember that? If they were wrinkled, what did you have to do?
To iron them out.
That's right. What's another word? What's another
Press.
word for that?
Press.
Press them out.
There you go. There you go. All right.
Press.
You pressed your clothes, right?
Oh,
Yes. Yeah.
Well, what are the letters for clothing in Arabic?
The letter for clothing.
What's the word? Yeah, for clothing.
The word for clothing.
Labas.
There you go.
Yeah. Libas. Yes.
That's right. Libas. There's your
Lambasin. Yeah.
And
Lambasin.
it's also because clothing, especially way back in antiquity, used to be very heavy on the body.
Yeah.
Especially places like Europe and other places, even in Africa, when the more royalty got involved in styles and stuff, it seemed like they decided that the more clothing you had on,
the
richer you were. That was what it was a sign of. But the more royalty the more clothing you had on, the richer you were, but the more pressure you had on you because of the authority. You understand?
Yeah.
So all of these things, I'm pointing out to you, all of these things are connected. If you can find a connection, keep practicing with the interchangeability, with the Grimm's Law aspect of your books, because that's where all of these keys are. Once you can memorize that M and N go together, L and R go together, P, B, V, F, M, that these letters go together as certain categories, then if you can only imagine, every time you look at a word, you're going to see connections.
Yeah.
Every time, no matter where you're looking, no matter where you hear it, no matter what language.
Right.
So you'll easily be able to look at AMN in Iman and say immune like I did, or say amnesia. It's all going to have something to do with the mind. You'll be able to look at all of these words and find their English equivalents. And on that note, that's the next book I told you I'm working on, inshallah. I got about another week's worth of work to put into that book. And then, of course, Karima's got to give it the once over. She's loving it as I'm doing it, because this whole thing about the fitra-based meanings of Quranic Arabic words, this is a phenomenon taking place. I'm telling you, I'm surprising myself with what Allah is sending me, because it's going to make it very easy for you to go straight from that book into your Quran. I wish I had had it ready prior to Ramadan, but inshallah, you'll be able to give it out as Eid gifts. But for you to be able to go in there and look up Iman and look up Asr and look up these other words that I've been giving you, and especially those of you who are lecturers, and you're looking at the fitra-based meanings for each letter and then the word as those letters become combined. And I know Wally and I had a conversation about that a couple of days ago. That's when you will begin to sink your real teeth into this knowledge. When you can explain it back, take it out of the book and explain it back. So those are the conversations I'm going to be having with all of you going into semester 3. Semester 3, if you choose to sign up for it, you can actually start dealing with it as soon as you're able to do so. Same deal, because you know this semester ends on June 26th, and we're in June. This is the 5th, so it's coming to a conclusion. But we're going to be doing something sort of radically different in semester number 3. Semester number 3 is going to pull out of you your teaching ability, your individual teaching ability. You might not even think you have it, but it's there. And the reason I need to do that in semester number 3 is that before semester number 3 is over, it seems to me, Allah knows best, it seems to me as though there are going to be some major opportunities for us to set up some online schooling and some hands-on practical schooling in places that we set up and design. I can't tell you much more than that. I could only say that the wheels are rolling on that. And Allah, during this month of Ramadan, has been opening up some major avenues for us to begin to exploit. But if you're not ready, you can't blame me. Because for as long as you've known me, I've been telling you that this day is coming. So you either want to do it, prepare to do it, or just remain on the sidelines. That's fine. It's okay. We need a cheering squad also. But I'd rather see you on the field with the ball in your hands. That's where I'd rather see you. So keep that in mind. I'll be setting out a notice to that effect as we come to the conclusion of semester number 2. The book that I'm talking about is called Quranic Connections. And it's going to be dealing with at least 50 fitra-based Quranic Arabic terms that are common. You know them already. You just don't know all of what they mean. So that's what we're going to be going into. And that will be for the mere cost of $25. Some of you have paid already, and you'll be the first ones to receive it. Those who have not, who are prepared to do so, it's the regular PayPal deal. Just make sure that you make a note that that's what it's for. Other than that, it becomes a donation. If you don't put that, you know, you got this $50 and you want 2 books, and you just put $50, then I have to assume that it's just a donation, unless you tell me otherwise. So make sure that you include that along with your full name, address, etc., in the PayPal note or in the money order note, or whichever way you're choosing to pay for that. Okay, so we got to bring this to a conclusion at some point before Ramadan ends. Messing around with y'all, we'll be celebrating the Eid on the telephone. But
I just want to say thank you, my brother.
Oh, say it. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Likewise. Thank you. Thank you.
Start the conversation and go another half an hour, but I just want to say thank you, alhamdulillah, for Allah blessing you and information that you have bestowed upon us. And we know it's coming from Allah to have guided someone in our community in the direction that you're in. And inshallah,
I appreciate your appreciation.
Spread out with the Sabil, spread it wide.
Yeah. And I would also say behind that this class, as you know, was a closed class, but I told you that you could invite people who you felt by your decision would be able to benefit from the subject matter. So now that the class is said and done and you know what the content is, I still offer you that opportunity not to send it out on an email blast, not to put it on Facebook, but if there are individuals, an imam or a teacher in a school or a friend of yours or a coworker, somebody, a churchgoer friend of yours who this is the kind of replay that I will give you permission to share. So feel free to do that, but also try to let me know who you shared it with. I don't want it just an indiscriminate, type of, well, I gave it to the masjid or I put it, no, I want it so that it goes to specific people who you choose based on your relationship with them, who you feel will benefit from what we were talking about tonight. So keep that in mind. But I thank all of you.
Thank you.
Tonight is in the top 10. You guys are the top 10 that I'm looking at. Not the talented 10, not the talented 10.
Can I ask the class a question before we go?
Go right ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I just wanted to, because I was thinking about this as I study, and I said, I want to does the other class members, other instructors go through the same thing I go through when studying, and the connection that come to my mind, and it takes me into all kind of sciences and brings it back home. Does that happen to any of you?
Yes, sir.
It takes you into those other worlds.
That's the nature of the product.
Alhamdulillah. I said to myself, I know they have to feel what I'm feeling.
Like we were talking about Ein Kafa. I went to the German Hitler time period in my mind. He said Ein Kafa.
Well, that would be Mein Kampf.
Yeah.
We're not talking that.
Now, one group I thought of when you was talking about pressure, I thought about the impressions. I just want to say that.
Oh, yeah. Curtis Mayfield and the impressions.
Some of the songs Curtis wrote put a lot of pressure.
Oh, he did, especially if there's hell below. We're all going to go, he told us, huh?
Wow.
That's a lot of pressure.
Wow. One more question.
That's what Surah Al-Asr was trying to tell you. But the only thing is that Allah left you a doorway out. He said, so you got 4 doors.
Yes.
But you got to find a way to get through all of them, not just one of them. That's the key.
Brother Instructor?
Yes,
I did invite Kaira and Quran, especially to the last part when you started talking about the flaws.
Yeah.
So they sat and Quran got a little antsy, but I had him sit as long as he could, and then Kaira sat through to the end until we got, start talking about the different questions. But
yeah, that's fine. Just let Quran know that there's a whole surah in the Quran on the ants.
I will definitely tell him that.
Tell him we don't have any problems with him being antsy.
Oh my goodness. He turned 14 in March.
Yeah.
And you have
they say ants in the pants.
Yeah, we're gonna invite him to in fact, the next class we have, I'm gonna introduce you to an idea that one of our learners came up with.
Yes.
It'll be kind of the equivalent of what Dr. King called the poor man's march. except
Right.
we're going to have a common man's convention.
Okay.
And inshallah, inshallah, it's going to be in Atlanta.
Yes, sir.
So
That's
those of you in that area, you're going to talk to the people who are responsible for bringing that together. And it doesn't matter if it turns out it's only for the males, though. Now, the females can support us in other ways, and we'll explain that to you. But there's a need right now for us men to gather our thoughts, gather our concerns for the future. Because if not, look, one of the plans of the enemy is just to sit tight and wait for us all to die from old age.
Sure.
That's right.
They don't have to come and drop no neutron bomb or nothing on the masjid or nothing to, talk bad about us. All they got to do is wait us out. That's what they're saying.
That's right. That's what happened with Moses' people.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. So we are determined.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, we are determined to not let that happen. It's going to be in late July as it stands. So, but we only want you to come if you can afford it. And we're going to make it affordable because we're going to be staying in places, in people's homes and etc. to cut down the cost. We want you to bring your sons, your grandsons, if you can. It's going to be a weekend full of great information. And inshallah, again, we're going to be having probably a morning call immediately after Ramadan to firm up the details of that. It's a great idea. It's a revolutionary idea.
Great.
That's an answer to my prayers.
Okay.
Because I need to put Quran someplace with some brothers who.
Yeah, who's going to tell them what it is? They're going to bring them some hot.
He's past my, woman.
Yeah,
Yes,
he's
yes,
14.
ma'am.
You're not supposed to be putting in all that. You put in your work already.
That's right.
Yes.
Yes.
Someone had a question?
I had one question. One more quick. This is my last question. Because I was thinking how Asr, it starts off in Asr in the Insaan, and I was thinking about how we made the connection between insane and insane, and I was just thinking that's interesting how you have all the by the time the pressure. The pressure will bring about insanity and loss. This is something that came to my mind, and then how it goes to the end and becomes pleasant.
Well, that's a good point. That's a good point. But I want you to also look at the focus of that surah. And I mentioned at the beginning that the word Asr is also related to the English words author,
yes,
and authority. So Allah is also speaking to anybody who is occupying a position of influence in the world. Now you can name your candidate, whoever you think. See, all leadership in the world today has been fashioned off of ancient ideas that came out of ancient religions and ancient mythologies, with the headliner, as I said, being the myth of Osiris. So if you listen to the word Asr and listen to the Egyptian word for Osiris, which was Al-Asr, you hear it very clearly.
Yes,
so
Asr.
Allah is also saying that I swear by Al-Asr, meaning that myth that you establish, that you have fashioned all of your successive leaders after. All of your successive leaders are actually sitting in the role of Osiris over the people. Osiris was a sun god, S-U-N. When they invented the myth of Jesus the Christ, as he's presented in the Bible, they fashioned him after Krishna, who was fashioned after Osiris.
Yes.
The sun god. It's just that they changed the S-U-N to S-O-N. So the sunset of Asr is when the sun begins to decline, right? Right. So that sunset represents the fall of Osiris from his pinnacle position, and he's beginning to make his descent into the underworld according to the mythology. So if we were looking at the clock, we'd say it was between the time of what we call Asr, right? Same word, and Maghrib. That's where that period is right there. It's a descent into darkness. That's why the majority of people are going to be lost and in loss.
Yes.
And the only ones who are going to come back up around that arc to reach daylight again, you have to go through those 4 doors. إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. By the time you get finished getting toughened up by Saber, Saber is going to bring about another word with sub in it called Subha.
Summa.
Subha.
Allahu Akbar.
Like we say Subhanallah. Subha means the morning light.
Oh, and that's one of the words for dawn also.
That's correct.
So yeah. Yes.
Instructor.
Yes.
Let's take this particular point I want to break up next time, but I just want to put it out there. Shadow, as it during that particular time of the day, you know, the shadow is the longest, and also the shadow is cast because there's an object, you know, in the way of the light. And that is the time of the day where the shadow is the longest on the decline. So it's a lot to look at and deal with in that analogy.
Yeah, but it's all relevant.
Yeah.
It's all relevant, and we'll look at that. In fact, I would ask that you prepare a statement to that effect.
Okay.
That we can possibly open up with, or maybe toward the end of the class, we can present that. That's what I want all of you to do. If you have something meaningful that you know takes more than 2 or 3 minutes to say, just present it. You can either write it out, email it to me, and I'll email it to the entire group. You know, or we can have it so that we begin to divide up some of the webinar time between those of you who I know are sure enough about yourselves to be able to make presentations. That's what this is about.
You know, I dealt with that in the book, so it's on. I'll tell you what page it's on.
Okay.
Alhamdulillah.
Yeah, tell us the name of your book again.
Liberating Minds from an Oppressive Word Environment.
And how they can get it.
Just email me at climatesuccess@gmail.com or call me at 214-370-5612. And I'll get one right out to you.
Yeah, it's a great book.
214-370-5712?
5612.
5612.
It'll be in a replay, so you'll have it. All right. Just fast forward all the way to this point. You're able to get that number. But you should have it in your book collection. You should have it as an e-gift for people. And inshallah, we're going to put forth better efforts to support our own products, especially from the learners group.
Yes.
You know, there are different ones among us who actually have products, whether it's poetry, books, and other things that we should be more than glad to support. That's the beginning of the building of true community life. So let's keep that in mind. All right. Well, the sun has set on this conversation.
All right. Alhamdulillah.
And one thing I did forget to say, and I won't go into big detail on it, but it's important for your notes. And that is that Imam Muhammad said that the sun also represents social knowledge or social logic. So the decline of the sun in this term Asr also represents the decline in social logic.
Yes.
And that's exactly what you're seeing in the world today.
Yes.
Whenever you can stand up and run for governor over somebody's state and tell the people openly that you are in favor of child molestation, that you beat your wife and raped her. This is a man, I'm not even gonna give you the details if you haven't heard about it, but this is a man running for office and getting votes. So it shows you the level of dumbed down that social logic has taken, the whipping, the beating that social logic has taken to the point where people are just numb.
Oh,
They're just numb. If he can lower taxes, to hell with what he does at home, you know, that kind of thing. And the thing is, it's not that he actually did all this stuff or agrees with all of this stuff. It's that the powers that be, whatever they are, whoever they are the ones who decide what news is going to reach the ears of the public. And they only let out what's going to serve their scheme. And their scheme is to further dumb down the American public. So whatever you're watching on the news, stop thinking that it's real. It's mostly scripted. Listen, what Mr. Trump says is not what Mr. Trump is. What this so-called governor is, who's saying that he did these horrible things to his wife and he agrees that child molestation. No, what they're doing is conditioning the public spirit.
Yeah.
So that you will become more and more acceptable of sin and crime and vice until it reaches the point, the tipping point, they call it. Where some folks are, as they said in the movie, I'm mad as hell and can't take it no more, in Network.
Yes.
Interesting name, right? Network.
Mm-hmm.
And the people will begin to rebel, and that's when they'll have to bring out the real big guns, and that's when the real money is going to be made from prison industry and all of the things that are connected with a total shutdown of government and the taking over of the military, the militarizing of American cities. That's what they're looking for. They tried to do it through the fomenting of racism, didn't work. They tried everything they could to get us, so-called black people, to do something against white people because they were killing us in the streets. They were killing our young boys. The police, the white police were killing us. The white police were killing black police officers. They tried every way possible through a series of fake news stories. Listen to me good. And you know, I wouldn't tell you that if I couldn't prove it. Through a series of fake news stories on the most part, to get us to believe that black and white, quote unquote, will never be able to get along, especially in America, and that Elijah Muhammad was right. We need to kill these devils. We need to chase them off of the planet, and et cetera, et cetera. They revived right in front of our eyes. They revived a term that Imam Muhammad had sent to hell, and that is the term black as a name for your so-called race. Imam Muhammad buried that when he came out with the Bilalian. And then he compromised it when he said, well, if you won't accept that, let's go for African American. But that was just a great move on his chessboard. He knew what he was doing. He knew the majority of these people, these Christians and folks, wasn't going to accept Bilalian. But so then we said, well, African American. Now, all of a sudden, now we let the press, we let the major media change the term back to black. It used to be a time when they were afraid to call us black people in the media. They were afraid that they would offend us because they know what black means. But now all of a sudden, African American has disappeared and all of us are just black people and white people all over again. That's a scheme. Don't buy into their scheme. Don't use their language. If you want to go back to using Bilalian, you're better off saying Bilalian than you're saying black.
Yes. You're
even better off saying Bilalian than saying African American, because if you look at the details of that word, you're not even that.
Right.
You're not an African American when you look at the details of the word. And we'll talk more on that after Ramadan, because there's some raunchy stuff. I got to say it in a raunchy way for you to get it. So I'm not going to do that during Ramadan. And I want to say it to our children also, because they have to inherit this mess. And we can either leave them a mess or we can leave them a message. Yes. I'd rather leave them a message than leave them a mess. All right. So, Michael Hameen, you still with us?
Yes, sir.
You know what to do.
MashaAllah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. Our Lord, grant us the excellence of this life and the excellence of the latter, and save us from the fires of our own passions unchecked by good sense. Ameen. Assalamu alaikum.
Ameen.
Assalamu alaikum. Walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.
Ameen.
Ameen. Thank you.
Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone.
Alaikum assalam.
Indeed. Get yourself some rest.
All right.